We're on live now. Trying the third time to come on. Second device. If it doesn't work on this, I don't have any other devices that are charged enough. I have to go get other chargers for other devices, apparently. Okay. All right. Let's see what happens this time if I try to look at it. It's a lot of moving parts today. I promise this will be the last try. If it doesn't come up, it doesn't come up. It is what it is. Yeah, doing the same thing. It's saying that it's a. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on. Doesn't matter the device, so it's not a device. Oh, here we go. Okay, I saw it. I saw it that time. We're on. Sorry, it's gonna double up the noise. Some of you might hear feedback just for a second. I apologize. Prepare yourselves. In five, four, three, two, one. Okay. All right, we're straight. Praise y'all. Okay, sorry about that. Sometimes it takes a long time to get started. The stuff of traveling and trying to get yourself together online and stuff sometimes can be a lot. All right, well we got it. We cooking. We cooking. All right, sorry about that. We were trying to been trying to get you guys on for a little bit. Thought you guys were on, and even if you were, for some reason on the device I was using, I couldn't see anything, and others were saying they couldn't see anything either. So prayerfully, we got the situation taken care of. Sorry about that, but thank you for your patience. Sadah Mashapaki, Toda Miskapak. Thank you for being on with us again. We appreciate you all. We're going to go ahead and get started. We give our honor and praise to the Most High. All honor and praise to Him for my wife, the Honorable Alma, who lives a life that is able to be honored. All right, now that we got this going, my greatness. Now that we got this going, and once again, we're going to be having great time here. We got a whole lot more space. The way the Most High, way Holy Spirit did it is very interesting because I thought I had messed up with numbers and that somebody would actually be in between us. The way it worked, y'all worked it out. The one number that we didn't get in a row on all these lots is the one number that's across the way. So praise y'all. So we have the whole side, a huge amount of space, and you see how far back it goes. It goes, just as far. Well, it goes further back, but it goes pretty far to my right, pretty far to my left. So we'll be checking into the rest of the spots later, and as persons come in, we're excited to see you and see from you, hear from you, all that great stuff. Appreciate you, love you, honor you. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get into this word. I apologize. Also, too. So basically, tonight is going to be our initial sermon, if you will, for the. It's going to be the initial sermon for basically for our convocation. For Feast of Tabernacles. So we're excited about that. We'll make sure everybody's fed. And then we'll make sure everybody's fed. Everybody will get the gist of what this week's going to be about. We'll have even a little bit of games. I'll try to see if I can get the signal stuff more in order. We'll try to have like a little fun game for everybody. And if you would like to join us, I don't know how much sense it makes for you to do on your own. But if you want to, you can try and even join us virtually, and maybe I might be able to choose a couple of you guys that are virtually to try and do that with, or teach you guys how to play with each other while we're playing here physically at the same time. Game called Blind Faith. You're gonna need something that you can use as a blindfold, right? And you're gonna need some solo cups, or at least some kind of cups that are, that you can set on the ground and don't blow over that easily. Because you're going to need to have some stuff you can step around and quite possibly knock into. It doesn't necessarily fall over, right? Obviously not like glass cups or porcelain or anything like that, where you might hurt yourself if a cup falls over. But if you have like solo cups, plasticware, something like that, plastic cups would rather to be used. That'd be something that would help out if you want to try to join us. But we're going to do a few different things, and we're excited about it. We're thankful. We're grateful. We're appreciative. Um, and once again, we give our honor and praise to the Most High Yah. Thank you, everybody, for being on with us. Thank you for spending some time with us. And how's everybody doing? Now that we got this started, finally got it up, we'll go ahead and get ready to say our Bible pledge too. If you'd like to stand to your feet in reverence of Yahweh's word, we'll get ready with our Bible pledge in just a little bit. How you doing, Sister Deborah, Brother Alton, Sister Beck, Alberto, Keith, Am I a real preacher? I don't know what qualifies me as a real preacher in your eyes. You can listen long enough to find out if you like. How you doing, Junior? No religion, right? Because religion, by the way, everybody has religion. Religion just means what a legion of people repetitively do. So if you religiously drink water, you have a religion, right? But anyways, how you doing? Wagwan, Audrey, Sister Mignon. Is it Guelka? Not sure if I'm even saying in the ballpark with that, but thanks for being part of the community. XXL Rich Happy. Shalom. Peace, peace, peace. Sister Shima. Big brother Thomas. Sister Shirley. Sister Judith. Mr. Raj. Daughter of the Most High. Or daughter of the Most High. Peso. Zuri Sorbria. Or is it Sorbrija? Not sure which dialect. Divine Ascension. Beast Addict. Okay. I can't say that name. Chat. Lisa. Uh, and Halim Bleu Afrique probably is a Bleu en français BLE or sorry BL. EU. Okay, Bleu. Oh, hold on one second. Yeah, hold on. Okay, excuse me. We're gonna get ready to say our Bible pledge. And how you doing? Is it official pigeon? How you doing, Sister Shirley? Again, Sister Deborah, Brother Jay, Brother Yachasav. Once again, mic check just one more time since we've gone through all this just to get this up today. Yeah, can everybody see and hear me all right? Yes, no, maybe so. We won't be on as long as usual today. As long as you guys can hear me, I'm fine. All right, cool. Yep. You don't have to be a part of it, you know. You don't mind pledging allegiance to a flag, right? Or at least you didn't when you did it when somebody else forced you, but we don't force people here to do it, right? But how you doing? So let's go ahead. We'll get started here with our Bible pledge. And if you listen long enough, you'll actually be able to figure out what we're talking about. You ready? Because you'll hear it in our pledge. But those of you who would like to, in reverence of Yahweh's word, thank you so much. Those of you who are here to, you know, just go ahead and like, you know, try to whatever upon what we're talking about, you know, you'll probably hear enough to know maybe you'll be on, maybe something's different. Thank you, moderators. How you doing? Rock lot, by the way. Thank y'all for the love. Thank you, everybody, for being on all the different platforms. All right, here we go. Here we go. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yah's word. Hashem Yahweh. Amen. Yahweh Shem, his name is authority. Let it be done unto us. You may be seated or go back to what you're doing in the presence of the Most High Yah. How you doing, Callum? Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate you. All right. So today we're going to talk about a loss of innocence. Right? A loss of innocence. So once again, today we're going to talk about a loss of of innocence, right? So, and how you doing, Sister Dawn? This is Tamika's on with us. So, one thing that I've realized and recognized, one thing that I've realized and recognized is, have you, especially having our youth around, right, and having a lot more that can be pouring through prayerfully. Um, I was looking at some different things, and I was asking some questions, and my son getting older as well, and just listening to him having more, they have more adult questions, and the oldest of the babies are just going to be what I think age 10, age 11, right? But they're getting to age where certain conversations start happening, and you can see certain things formulate and being thought about, et cetera, et cetera. And Holy Spirit really put it upon me. I thought we were going to talk about it for early rise of Bible study session. We were taking somewhere different, right? But I began to think and ask and say to myself, what's going on with the loss of innocence? Because if somebody says you're well, this is not how they talk today. If somebody were to say, you're a noob, or we would hear you're not cool, or you a square, or you ain't hip, you don't know what you're talking about, you're not on our level. Nowadays, they might even say they not like us, something like that, right? Um, that's like one of the worst things, especially because of peer pressure and other things. One of the worst things that our children probably feel like they could hear, right? However, when I was thinking about it, usually when somebody says that, they usually mean, right? Usually what's meant is, oh, you know what? You're too innocent, right? If that makes sense. How you doing, Minister Akita? How you doing, Prince? Right? That's kind of what actually is being said. It's like, oh, you're too innocent. You're not dirty enough. You're not grimy enough, right? Like, what's all the stuff that's cool? If it's hot, if it's cool, if it's what's in the streets. Oh man, you was killing, right? Not you was righteous, not that you're doing great things, not that you're a nice person. You was killing. I remember when I was, as a musician, you be playing music and doing stuff and everything, and you get in yourself and somebody come to you, oh bro, man, you was killing. Or if you walk the, I don't know, I'm not Pastor Kofi, not hip or whatever, obviously when we use the word hip, but I'm not hip to everything, but I don't know, is this expression still to slay, right? Why are you slay? You slay because you killing, right? You slay because you killing, literally, right? You slay because, right? You're in other words, in order to be recognized for greatness and positivity, you have to do something. You have to be recognized as something that is detrimental, right? Innocence is lost, right? Innocence is lost. So since innocence is lost, you have to be in a position to where you recognize that the cleaner we are, the more we don't fit in, right? Innocence is lost. What persons are calling cool is stuff, and this is why it's important that we do meet up, virtually, and we do teach these babies, and we do make sure that we rewire, the thought process that's in our synapses and stuff that's been cross-wired the wrong way over period of a long period of sin and stuff like that. It's important that we have these conversations because a lot of us, if we're not if we're because we're called to cleanliness, to innocence, a lot of us don't want to be called anything innocent. Does that make sense? Right? Holy Spirit, that's a bar. Because a lot of us have been called to innocence, right? A lot of us don't want to be called anything, right? Don't want to be called anything that makes us sound like we're innocent. In other words, you know, we've been called to be lawful and keep up the word, but that doesn't fit into the system. And so everybody on your job, oh man, here you come talking about that again, right? How you doing, Dorimo? Right, here you go talking about this again. Here you come talking about righteousness again. Why are you always talking about the word? Up, you're around your church friends. Oh, here comes the person talking about Christianity and you're a follower of the way, or you're a Hebrew Israelite, and all y'all do blah blah. Right? because and you always talking about following the law. You guys are too strict. And by the way, it's interesting because the Christian who goes to church doesn't like it when the world says that they're too strict, right? Even though they're not necessarily as strict as we might be. That being said, here it comes where we are strict concerning the law, and they say, even though they'll say man should not live by bread alone but by every word out of the mouth of Yah, but then making a point to turn around and say why we shouldn't be so strict or so disciplined. Really, I see they'll call it strict because it has to have a negative connotation. For me, I call it discipline. Right? Come on, Sister Shima, that's what I call it. You can call it being strict. I call it discipline. You know, I praise Yah for this. He showed me yesterday or the day before. But Avak Hakodash really showed me. She showed me, right? Yesterday or the day before, that. But when you look at what Yahweh is doing, how Yahweh is speaking, the word is going forth. I have been able to take time out to so-called master something. I'm still not the greatest ever, or am I trying to be greater than other persons? I might not be the greatest that I'll ever become yet. I believe I'm still improving every day, right? And I think for preachers, usually about 50 to 60 years old is kind of like when you really start seeing us, especially those of us who've been like doing for a minute, you start seeing kind of like all of our power, so to speak. I'm praying that it'd be longer than that because I'm praying for a lot more years than the average person. That being said, right, we hit 50 or 60. But there's a book written by Malcolm Gladwell. Please forgive me, I don't recall the name of it. How you doing, Sister Taylor? And thank y'all for the love. Once again, thank you for the repost. Thank you for the shares, all that. Thank you for your love, donations, just being here. We appreciate you, all of it, on all the platforms. One of the things, I was trying to figure out where that noise is coming from. It's probably coming from my computer. I was like, why do I hear myself so much? Okay, sorry about that, y'all. It's like, why am I hearing myself so loud? All right, okay. Because other person's around and listening, but I was like, why is it so loud? Okay, excuse me. Where was I? Oh yeah, so Loss of Innocence, boom, boom. Oh, the other day it was revealed to me, so I was looking at this, or kind of reviewing a book that I've read before, long time ago, but a book by Malcolm Gladwell. My wife actually hit me to it. And while I don't agree with every single thing that Malcolm Gladwell says, especially when he changed up the word with Goliath, right, and showed you he wrote a whole book on it, and that you could tell he never actually read the Bible, especially about that, but he listened to what a lot of other persons said about it. But either way, Malcolm Gladwell from time to time will hit you with some game. And so I listened, and he was talking about, in order to be an expert of something, right? In order to be considered an expert in something, you basically put together 10,000 hours. And when I first initially read that, can I be honest with you? I was one of them people trying to be like the math ain't mathing. How do you spend 10,000 hours on anything, right? But then it became really easy to put together. It's not that difficult at all, right? Let's say, for example, right, the Holy Spirit showed me that just if you take from 2014, right, and you were to take, and we actually, believe it or not, some of you who are just joining us recently in the last few years, we've actually, at least definitely the last couple years for sure, we have actually backed off the amount of time that we used to be in live sessions teaching stuff like that, partially because of health, and just partially because it's a lot. I got family, I got stuff I got to do, right? And sometimes I even need time in my own space, in my own brain, right? But I looked at the time, right, and I was like, you know what, even with that, if you were to take away 60 days, which is a lot for us, but I was like, Holy Spirit showed me, if you just took 300 days a year, right? If we acted like I take 60 days off, I'd probably take about a month off, maybe a month, or maybe 5 weeks off at the most. But let's just go from like a month, 30 days, and double it, 60 days, to where we only say that I'm actually putting in work or doing what I do, right? Not including studying, not including lessons, not including stuff that we're teaching the children, not including personal study for myself, all this stuff, not including my personal walk. Just if we take teaching and preaching, and I would take or in teaching and preaching as far as the live sessions, we average or in 300 days, right? If we were to take away days off or stuff like that or whatever, the low end, this even is extremely low of what I'm doing. right? Even this is extremely low of what I'm doing, but it's let's say I do 3 hours a day for 300 days. That's low. That's low. I do more than likely, right? But Holy Spirit said if you could just take 300 hours or 300 days every day, 3 hours a day, that's 900 hours, right? And we do less, but that's 900 hours a year, right? How you doing, Brother Javon? Brother Tremont, excuse me. How you doing, Brother Craig? How you doing, Elder and Ais? Right. So that's 900 hours a year if we just do 300 days. 900 hours a year, right? 300 times 3, right? 900 hours. How you doing, double OG, triple OG? So 900 hours every year, right? If we keep calculating, if we keep doing the math, 900 hours every year, right? And we started just on the social media journey. This doesn't include before then, doesn't include when I was preaching, doesn't include when I was preaching as a pastor, as a minister in training in the church. Before that, it's Job's Witness, going all the way back to when I was 6 years old. I was going door to door when I was 4, right? If we just go starting at 2014 on, right? How you doing, y'all servant Isaac? Shabbat Shalom, right? If I were to do the math, right, 900 hours, right, then that means that we get to 9,000 hours already last year in 2014. So this year, if we add that on, that would be 9,900 hours. That means basically in a third of next year, that's 10,000 hours. Now, I'm telling you, I've already, right, those of you who are with us through Patreon, SEC University, your children get taught by us, my wife and I, Shabbat school sometimes that I help out with, stuff that we do as far as extra training, when persons come in, being grafted in, all that stuff. How you doing, Melissa? How you doing, Shay? How you doing, Bunny Bees? Everybody coming in, right? If we were to just take that, then I'm already this year just about at 10,000, right? You give me a third of next year on the low end, still doing the low end, right? I'm at 10,000. And I saw that and I said, man, that's a lot more, right, than what it is. It took grinding, it took discipline. It took removing negativity and removing sin. If I'm removing sin, by the way, and I'm becoming a sheep, and I'm becoming a living sacrifice, that also means I'm becoming more innocent. But persons don't want us to be in tune with innocence. It's like when somebody says to follow the law, right? And how you doing, Courageous B? Thanks for being part of the community. If somebody says to follow the law, you can't follow the law. You can't be perfect. But Christ said, be ye perfect, as your Abba, Hashemayim, as your Father in heaven also is perfect. Which means that perfection is not only possible, perfection is not only reality, perfection is not only something within our grasp, perfection is something commanded. Now, I'm not saying that means you can never be imperfect, but when we follow a perfect law, if you believe the Bible is perfect, then you believe that the Bible is pure. As we talked about for those who came over from Early Rise Bible Study Session, if you were with us for Early Rise Bible Study Session earlier, we spoke on, this thing of the place of I can do all things through Christ. And this position of I can do all things through Christ is a lot different than what we think, because when Paul is talking about this, Paul is saying that he has learned how to be content. He has learned that whether persons can give, he can give what he used to. If things are there, things are not necessarily where he wants them to be, but he has learned how to be content. He has learned how to be, he uses the terms, he has learned how to be full and hungry simultaneously, meaning that he has learned to get something that he can eat that helps him out where he is, but also the taste of it allows him to hunger, desire the same thing to fill him up every time. He gets up and he's disciplined and stays on his grind constantly and consistently, right? And by doing this, he becomes more and more pure. This is what tempting is called. If somebody's in the metallurgy, you as a metallurgist must comprehend that you have to purify something in order to make it clean. And in order to purify it, purification requires something called tempting. And if I tempt something, what it means is I'm removing any junk, any negativity, any dirty stuff from within it. I'm taking all of the dirt out of it, that I might be able to go ahead and make sure that I can have, righteousness. Right? I'm tempting it. I'm making sure that it's pure. I'm making sure that it's whole. That's what tempting means. Tempting means to purify it. Now, if one falls into temptation, it means we're really talking about that you have been tempted, but you fell into the dirt rather than falling into being pure. But if something is pure gold, it is only gold. If something is pure silver, it is only silver. right? So if something is pure, it cannot be impure simultaneously. Meaning that if something is purified, it means that you are taking out anything negative or anything that is against what it's supposed to be. And the question that Holy Spirit asked us during early rise of Bible study session was, well, if this is purified, right? If you're trying to purify yourself, become your best self, become the version that you were created to be before the foundations of the world, then question what's going on, right? What kind of dirt are you going to? Why are you afraid to be tempted? You've got to be willing to be tempted, to go through, to have something tested. And it's interesting, we'll test persons that are for us, but persons that are against us, we don't necessarily test sometimes. We'll test the kingdom of heaven, right, which you're not supposed to tempt Yahweh. We'll try to tempt Yah or purify it, but we don't take time out to say, what am I doing to purify the government or purify my living situation or purify the food that I eat. But we love to purify a whole bunch of other things, right, because we're not really trying to go through the actual process of obedience, of discipline, of seeing what Yah wants for us, right? There's a lot of different things that we're leaving hanging in this walk that we're supposed to be taking. And therefore we're not reaching our pure, right, or tempted, right, or post-tempted state. So the world today lacks innocence, right, and removes innocence. Only in a wicked, twisted system could you be in a position, only in a wicked and twisted system could you and I be in a position to where we are, persons are trying to make us feel guilty because we would tell our children that they should be male and female, right? Only on a wicked system could you be tempted, right? Or could somebody be trying to get you to fall into temptation and telling you that it's wrong to purify the stance of a girl or a boy, right? Think about how wicked that is, right? And to try and get on us, to tell us that us trying to remain innocent, what is an innocent girl? What is an innocent boy? What is a pure girl, a pure boy, right? What is it that Yah created you to be, right? We're in a world where telling our children that is something that in certain states they're trying to snatch you up. We're talking bad about ICE, and I'm not saying we should talk great about ICE. ICE is on some stuff. That being said, we'll talk bad about ICE because they're snatching up persons and children and stuff like that, and they shouldn't. But then we're not talking about the school system where your child goes to school and they snatching them up, telling them they should be this, that, and the third. And we're gonna have to make a decision. How dedicated are we gonna be? It is through this wicked system, because we might be in it, but we're not of it, right? And you got to realize that your innocence is a problem, because you're not in the place of innocence. You're in a place to where the world, right, wants to make sure that we are marrying the second beast or the Antichrist spirit, that Nero type spirit, to where one would rip the baby out of a woman's womb. I have to be careful. You can hear children running around, so I'm not going to say certain things I know, or the way I normally say it. But you get what I'm saying, though, right? We're in a situation to where what's righteous or tabah is achival, and what's achival is tabah. Or if you don't know what I'm saying, what's righteous is evil, and what's evil is righteous, right? And all these different things that are going on, we have to recognize and realize that we have been given a command to be what? Innocent, to be pure, to be holy, to be righteous. And that is more important to us than fitting into the world. So as persons are telling us all these things about, you got to be this, you got to be that, you got to wear, well, why are you trying to be nice? Why are you trying to be, why are you always trying to be nice? Why do you believe in the Bible? Why? And they try to make you feel bad for it. You got to realize that the world is trying to do that, and therefore you are being tempted. Yah will allow you to be tempted. You need to be tempted. We got to see, to be honest. Remember, faith without works has no life. So we're gonna have to see if you actually stand for what you believe on. You believe it 10 toes down, right? We're gonna have to see if you stand for what you say you stand for, right? Do you honestly stand for what you say you stand for? How you doing, Sister Greta? Right? Do you actually believe? Are you disciplined enough to go through it? Can you remain perfect? Can you get tempted to the place to where you're just pure gold? Can you be tempted to the point to where you're just pure yourself? Right? Can Alma be pure Alma? Can Solomon be pure Solomon? Can Kofi be pure Kofi? Can Dwayne be pure Dwayne? Can Elder Anais be pure Anais? Can you see what I'm saying? Right? The tempting comes. The heat comes. And during the heat, when you're tempting, right, the only way you're going to be able to tempt it to clean it out thoroughly is you have to even tempt it to the point to where it changes form. Shalom, Sister Sheila, how you doing? Right? So, and all these different things that are going on, right, you have to realize and recognize that even with all this, that we, what is it I'm going for? So, yeah, that we're going to be purified and we're going to even change form, right? When you're being made innocent, you're not even in the same form, right? You can't be what you used to be and be tempted at the same time, right? The tempting comes to test you. And so, yes, the tempting should make you feel a certain way, right? If you take solid gold, right, a gold nugget, and you tempt it, and you get enough of those gold nuggets, you tempt it, you remove the stuff, you have to change the literal, the literal way that the components are bound together, or heated up to where the components aren't bound together in the same manner, to get them to go fast enough, right? To get things to move fast enough, to get the stuff that's supposed to be solid to now become liquid, right? They got the particles have to move faster. They can't move so slow that they remain bound, and therefore, when certain things remain bound, there's other impure, right, dirty components to what should just be pure gold. So you heat up the gold so that everything that's in there becomes so fast that it liquefies, and now through that you can begin the separation process of dirt from gold. You can sift through gold. You can't sift through gold when it's solid. When everything's okay, when the temperature's easy, when it's a nice cool 75 degrees. I don't know. Can somebody look up for me? I don't know what is the temperature that you have to heat gold up or whatever, right? But you gotta whatever. But you gotta heat that thing up, right? I'm gonna see if I can find it. But you gotta heat that thing up, right? In order to get it to move, right? You can't. 75 degrees ain't enough to tempt gold, right? Let me see. Excuse me. Oh, what temperature is needed to melt gold, right? You gotta melt it. Oh, whoops! I put it in the wrong place. Sorry, y'all. Try this again. What temp is needed to melt gold? Okay. So you got to have basically close to 2,000, it's 1,948 degrees Fahrenheit. So you got to get closer up to 2,000 degrees to be able to melt gold, right? I know it's 90 degrees outside, but that ain't enough, right? If it was 200 degrees, right? If it's 100 degrees outside, you're gonna need that times 20. Right, to be able to get to the point to where you can actually say, we'll tempt it. We can see what's in it, right? It's not as simple as just being like, I found a gold nugget. Yeah, you found a gold nugget. Now we got to melt it. Because we can't get the exact value of it. Or we can't get, well, we have a value of it, but the value comes with dirt and this and that. So how do we get the dirt and purify it? Well, we got to put it through a process called purification, called tempting. And once we tempt it, right? Once we put it at that temperature, then we can go ahead and start to remove impurities. Once we remove the impurities, then we allow it to go back to its normal temperature. All right. Once it goes back to its normal temperature, now, right, we can assess the gold in its normal state without dirt. But before we can, before we can see what is or appreciate the gold, before we can say what is the value of the gold, it must first go through a purification process that requires a lot of heat. Before we can say the gold is innocent, it requires a lot of heat. Before we can say your life is innocent, it requires a lot of heat. Stuff has to be turned up. How you doing, Money Green? Right? Tempting must happen. But in the world, nobody wants you to be innocent, which also means nobody wants you to be tempted. Right? That's why, like we were talking about for Early Rise Bible Study session, you have all this motivational speaking, and a lot of it is on point, but you got to realize some of it was going on where there's this big thing that you should never feel any kind of way. You should never go through anything. You should never, nobody can tell you this, nobody can stop this and that, or whatever, blah, blah, whatever. No. Like, you must be tempted. You must be able to go through. You must learn how to be content. But as Paul said, I've learned how to be full and hungry at the same time, right? I know what I hunger for that fills me up. right? I'm not just eating stuff that's going to make me still bloated and still, not able to use the restroom and still I'm going to get what I need nutrient wise so that the magnesium levels in my body, when I get those correct, will be able to take real food and do what my body needs to do with it, right? But many persons say, no, don't be content. No, no, I've learned to be content if this is where Yah told me to be. And I've learned that while being content where Yah tells me to be, he's always growing me. So if he's always growing me in stature, and he's always growing my family, and if he's always growing my business, and if he's always taking care of my bills, and if he owns all the cattle on 1,000 hills, well, then if this be the case, where he's always growing us, and he's always in control, and he's always loving us, and he will never stop doing this, and he's always promoting us, then at some point, beloved, we should trust where we are and be content while knowing that still there's time to grow. It takes a load off, right? This is why a lot of times, the sayings go stuff like, let go and let Yah, right? You're holding on to something and you can't do nothing about it anyways. As Yehoshua said, which one of you by worrying added 1 cubit to your stature? Which one of you by being frustrated and anxious and, well, everything's not happening the way it is? No, no, no. Yeah, stuff happens. It will continue to happen. As a matter of fact, it's natural to be concerned. It's natural to pray about it. It's in your nature to say, okay, things going to have to get better or else. You're not called to be blind, right? But we're also called to have faith, right? We're also called to have faith. And guess what develops your guess what's going to purify your faith? You guys remember the scripture we just went through in the Roman road we did? What's that? Romans chapter 5. I think we're going to start at verse 3, if I'm not mistaken. But if we go to Romans chapter 5, watch this, right? If you guys remember, it's okay. It takes a lot to remain and to get to a place of where we should be. Yes, I know. And somebody says, some of you once again have a problem with this stuff because even though the Bible says be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, we still think there's no way we can be perfect. Even though the Bible tells us that we should make sure we strive towards righteousness and being without evil and therefore innocence, persons still have hard times with these words because we've been told so much that we can't obtain what Yah says we can obtain. Watch this, Romans chapter 5. Let's do it verse 3. Here we go. It says this. It says, and not only so, but we glory in what? In tribulations, right? In tribulation. And somebody asked about that word. We'll go ahead and just give the Greek connotation and the Greek denotation of that word too real quick. So this word, tribulation, right? Somebody was asking what was the difference between tribulation and trial, I believe, right? Well, here we go, even in the Greek, just to give you a little extra on that. I remember that from Q&A. Somebody was asking about that, right? This word, tribulation, is a feminine noun. I believe it's thlipsis or thlipsis. Thlipsis. I forget what thlip means, so please forgive me, but thlipsis in the Greek. And it actually means a pressing or pressing together or pressure. And, right? A pressure. Metaphorically speaking, it can even mean oppression, affliction, tribulation, distress, or straits, like dire straits, right? So this is a pressing together or a pressure. Tribulation can even be looked at as pressure, right? As tempting, as putting pressure on something, pressing something together, right? We press toward the mark of the high calling. Can even be, we could actually use wording that says we experience tribulation that pushes us, right, towards the tav of the high calling, right, of the kletos. How you doing, Sister Danielle? Right, but we press. You said we can't be perfect, but we're taught practice makes perfect. There you go. That too, right? We become practitioners of something enough. We begin to go through a perfecting process, right? Right. But Romans chapter 5 verse 3 it says, and not only so, we glory in tribulation. So we glory in what we glory when something's pressing on us. If you don't get this, if some of you will get this reference, some of you won't, but Deuteronomy 28, 54 and 55, where it talks about that the men start coming home and acting crazy, that's because they're under siege. But the first thing that happens is they start looking at what other brothers have in the press, and we start getting jealous of each other because during the siege is designed to put pressure on you, right? To deny you food, to deny you like thinking that you can get out, to mess with your mind, right? For you to not take trips, probably possibly cut you off from family, have you constantly worried and concerned. And so even if you're under siege, even if you're the siege, you can be under siege for 2 years and be fine. There are some wars that have been won where persons literally just stayed outside and wouldn't let anybody leave for a couple years. After that, certain things start happening developmentally just because you can't move the same. Matter of fact, I mean, we didn't go through a siege per se like that, but all of us went through recently the whole COVID experience, right? Children, women, men, all went through this COVID experience, and we had to learn quite a few things, right, on the fly. And there were a lot of things that started coming out when there was press. A lot of persons at first were like, "Oh man, this is gonna be so great. I get time off," right? A lot of persons were like, I know there were many persons that didn't want the jab and wanted to go to work and all that stuff. But there were a lot of persons, man, it's gonna be so great. I'm gonna be off work. Some people, oh man, I'm finally gonna be able to be with my wife and my children, or my husband and my children, or my husband or my wife or my boyfriend or my boo or whatever. And then what happened? After about a couple months, you started hearing these weird videos coming out where cats who were the ones that you swear that you love and you respect and you follow them on social media and all that, they started coming up with all these things, and they were saying stuff like, I don't want to be around these children. I thought I loved my family, but I guess I don't. They started saying stuff like that. Y'all recall? I can't be the only one that recalls that. We're all these persons who were family this and the community this, and you need time off, and we're working from home, and the children are getting at school at home, and all this stuff, and we're finding out we can do these things without government assistance. And next thing you know, everybody, oh man, I can't wait till we can go back. And now I get it's different because you can't go outside this and that, but I'm just saying, right? If you were a person to where, like, we found out real quick if you really honored family and if you really were innocently like loving your family. There's a lot of persons that all of a sudden got mad because they couldn't cheat. Oh, oh, you got the request, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And how you doing, Scott? Thanks for being part of the community. You said yes, every day is a challenge for you to strive to be perfect, dealing with family issues, so you lean on the word to strengthen you, and you strive to be righteous leader in your family. Praise Yah. Right? Welcome back, Nastya. Right? I believe from Russia. Right? Thanks for being back on. So, so yeah, but we see all these different things that are going on in persons who don't recognize, you know, that a lot of persons talk a great game, but then all of a sudden there was a siege. And during that siege, when it became tempting or tribulation, when the press was on from every side, when you try to go outside, and if you try to go outside, you could get arrested or get shot. Literally, some persons. Now, I know there probably was something in there, but I can't say that I have exact proof. I know I did see when persons got shot with the rubber bullets a few times just for going outside and looking at police coming through their street, right? And got some pretty nasty dingers in their forehead. How you doing, Kareem? Thanks for being part of the community. All right, how you doing, Nacha? Right, but we know these things to be certain, to where there's a lot of persons who are out here and, oh yeah, I can do this, I can do it, and then just some tribulation happens, and next thing you know, totally different situation, right? Totally different person. All of a sudden, oh, this is too much, I can't do, right? But we glory in tribulation. Now remember this word glory also too. It actually it's talking about the heaviness or the weight or the imprint, right? When somebody says the glory, we're used to glory and all that, and say, but glory means weight, heaviness, imprint. So that means we glory when the weight of Yahweh comes upon us, right? When the seriousness of this task comes upon us, right? We can take that on, the imprint, where you can see a sign that He's on us because of our relationship with Him. When stuff presses on us, what kind of press is it? When Yahweh has already put His imprint on me and has pressed His word, and I am persuaded that nothing can separate me from His love, then all this other stuff is trivial. How you doing, Sister Omika? Yeah, persons fold under pressure, but all this other stuff becomes more trivial the deeper I get into the richness of His love. You know, when somebody lies on you, it's easy to deal with it. I'm not saying that you have to keep being a doormat and stick around, but forgiveness, right? Because you got to build up trust after you forgive. However, forgiveness is mandatory. And so forgiveness is easy when you realize that Yah forgave your lives. It's easier, at least, when you realize that His glory had to come upon you before you start talking about the mote in your brother's eye, or the little piece of straw, right, that's in their eye that you could blow away the chaff, right? But you got that whole 2x4. When you realize that you had to come out of different things, and you realize you had to come out of sin yourself. You can be a little more patient when it comes to somebody else dealing with sin. Right? When you realize that Yah might have been frustrated with you when you were acting a fool, when you realize you weren't always your so-called best self. Right? You know that, right? Like there was a time that you were falling short too. Right? I know that's tough for some of us, but there was a time that you wasn't always, you know, hitting the mark, getting everything right, quoting every scripture. There was a time that you weren't dressing appropriately, and now you can make sure everybody else is. There's nothing worse than when I remember I used to when I used to go to church. One of my pet peeves I used to talk about quite often was that you see women. There'd be a sister who would come in, and she'd be, um, she would be with child, or she would be a single mother, and everybody would be getting on her because she was out there shacking up and she got whatever she deserved. But then when you've been around the church long enough, you start going, wait a minute, so you was a single mother, or you was cheating, or your baby not even your husband's, and he forgave you. Like, you start going through and you're like, what makes you think that you're so much better than everybody else? Right? See, those persons want you to think they're innocent. But see, innocence doesn't come from our standard. It doesn't come from what you call yourself. Innocence comes from being pure as far as, can you be offered up as a living sacrifice? Yeah, you've seen it. Yeah, I'm just saying. There was a sister, who was extremely great with that, right? Forgive me, I forget. I think, well, I don't know if she would want me to say her name, but I'll call her Sister JN in case she ever sees this, right? I know she's watched from time to time, even though I haven't seen her in years, right? Sister JN, elder, teacher. When she retired, I actually played music for her retirement, and when I say it was at a banquet hall filled, when I say it literally, it was a banquet hall filled with former students that she taught in 50, 60 years or so of teaching. Banquet hall filled, and persons coming up and giving their testimony, and she was somebody who herself she was somebody herself who basically got, was a church girl, got with the wrong guy, got impregnated. Her son thought that her mother was her son's mother. um, all that. She went through, rough period. She went to college because her mom said, hey, I'm gonna take care of the child, you still need to go to college. She made a great life for herself and was great in the kingdom, and still is, as far as I know. I hope she's still around, and she, even if she had passed, she still is great in the kingdom, right? But she did all that stuff, and so when we did her ceremony, like, we knew her, we knew of her, we knew her career. She would always talk about her children. Every once in a while one would come through, so we knew she was putting in work, right? And when I talk about her children, not just the little babies, but even the ones that were grown. But when I tell you, no lie, no cap, cafeteria, not cafeteria, I went back to my childhood, auditorium, and I'm talking about like banquet hall, filled with persons, not just 10 tables, 20. I'm talking about, like, there was no cap, probably about like 50, 60 tables, filled from front to back. We're on the stage and everything, doing praise and worship because that's what she wants, right, during the ceremony, or that's what her son, who was putting it on for her, wanted. But that's what she's in the Yah. And all these students are coming up and they're telling stories about her, things that you can see that she got together in her own experience. Like, she would see girls that were going to quit school, and she would tell them, no, don't quit school just because you're pregnant. She was like, yeah, people might try this and laugh at you, and they would tell their experiences of how, some of them were going to give their babies up for adoption. And she was like, no, you don't give that baby up for adoption. Have your family help do this or whatever. She would help out herself, right? You would hear stories of how persons couldn't read or write, for years and years, and faked it, and got with her and felt comfortable enough to actually admit that they couldn't do something. They were able to become better, right? Like she was, and so I when I saw that, I knew of her, right? But I began to know, oh, okay, this is serious. Like, I think, like, I realized that this is serious. Like, she lives this. Hold on one second. I got it. All right. Okay. Yeah. So that's when I realized that this, she was serious. She was serious about what she was doing. She lived that thing. When you hear testimony after testimony after testimony, they had to, cut people out because we couldn't stay there all night, right? But this is, but she showed, and something she went through. She was tempted. She fell into temptation, but just because she did, she couldn't come back and repent and get her life in order and help many others along the way, right? When we went back home to Ghana, she was one of the first persons to give, her whole life, and wouldn't want you to know anything about it, right? Wouldn't want you to go ahead and pump everybody's head up about it, this and that. That's why I didn't say her name, right? Those of you, if anybody's listening, actually knows who I'm talking about, you know who I'm talking about, right? Right, and that's the Messiah. That's what I'm saying. Some persons will never see the Messiah unless you introduce them to it, because he lives inside of us too, right? So, but that's innocence according to the standard that she's supposed to be at, right? That's innocence according to the standard that we're supposed to be at, right? According to Yahweh's standard, according to what the Most High wants from us and for us, right? It's not according to the world. See, innocence is not. See, watch this. Innocence is not. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this. Obviously, we believe in this, but innocence is not purely like, oh, okay, you're a virgin, right? Like, because you can be a virgin that cusses everybody out. You can be a virgin that commits murder. You can be a virgin that's still doing things in your head, and if you do it in your head, you still whatever, right? But even a woman who's married, right, can even be considered to be a virgin by the definition, at least the Hebrew definition of the word, right? And as such, she can be considered that because she's chaste, she's pure. Virgin doesn't only mean you haven't physically slept with somebody. Virgin also means that you are chaste, that you are pure, depending on the context. How you doing, Sister Beverly? I'm sorry I missed you. How you doing? Right? And so, in all these different things, innocence is required. Innocence is mandatory. Innocence is okay. Innocence is so-called cool, right? Well, we would say back in the day, innocence is like that. Innocence is before some of y'all, before my time, innocence is hip. Innocence is where it's at, whatever. Innocence is in having purity, chastity, right? Modesty, including our brothers, right? See, once again, the world wants you to get away from innocence. So brothers will sit up there. You'll have men get up here and say, this girl for the street, blah, blah, blah. But then look at what these men are wearing. They showing they behind, literally, right? They're not supposed to keep innocence. Or you have brothers, who will say, I'll never let my daughter date, blah, 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 this and that. But then you see them, and they'll also tell you simultaneously, oh, yeah, if I was raised and my teacher was doing blah, blah, I would just do whatever. These men are not of an innocent mind, and it's not supposedly cool, right, or thought-provoking, if you will, according to them, right? You don't fit in when you're trying to be innocent. If we're supposed to feel bad about not fitting in, we're supposed to feel bad about not being innocent, right? But the reality is that we shouldn't feel bad for being what we're called to be, which is pure. How do you know, once again, how do you know when gold is pure? When you've tempted it, when you've heated it up, and when you've gone through it, when you've combed through it, and you've been able to go ahead and allow it to get back to where it is. You've seen everything for yourself. It's been broken down. It's been heated up. It's gone through extreme circumstances. And so now that it's made it out of the extreme circumstances, right, you now can look at it as innocent. You can look at it as pure gold. Before, you couldn't look at it as pure gold. Now you can, right? Before, you couldn't look at it as pure gold. Now you can look at it as pure gold. Why? Because it's been through the fire. It's been tried. Hold on one second, y'all. That on.
Okay, how long do you think it's easy to put up?
I can put it up and talk. You want? No. You want the turf? What is turf? There. What is turf? Okay. Yeah. So a lot of persons are trying to get us to go away from innocence. Right? A lot of persons are trying to get us to go away from innocence because, right, innocence is what gets you caught up. I'm sorry, lack of innocence is what gets you caught up. So we now lack innocence. We've gone away from where innocence is not only a reality or a prism, but now we've gone away from innocence as something that we should be. Right? Persons don't want us to be innocent. They don't want us to go through things innocently. Right? They don't want your children to have, right? Once again, your children are considered to not be cool enough. Why? Because they don't know about things separate. But even being separate or being holy, it means to be innocent. I can't be part of the same thing and be holy simultaneously. I can't be part of the worldly things and be innocent of what the reward is for the world. See, the world has a reward coming just like we have one coming. They're just not the same one. Okay, hello Israelites. How are you doing? I'm not a Christian. What are you talking about? You said, you, the people of Israel, firmly reject or condemn those who have worshiped a man named Jesus. Okay. And you wrote, I don't worship him, but that's okay. And you wrote sentences in a book you called the New Testament with aim of defining and making what WTF? Okay, I didn't write a book with any of that. So you need to get yourself together or you can just go ahead and leave. Normally I would try to be a lot nicer than that. I'm still being nicer than I could be, but you got to get yourself together or just roll out because you come to the wrong place for that mess. All right? Y'all pray. Oh, you know what? I forgot. Let me get an umbrella real quick. It's starting to rain. I was like, I knew I was missing something. Give me 1 second. Hold on.
What? That's not trash. No, man. No. I know. I told him to put it on the couch. He just said, uh-uh. Here.
Okay. All right. So, in all these, excuse me, because we got devices, so I got to make sure. You have any devices
Not
out
out
here?
here.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. Oh, Solomon, please go inside and close those windows up so the rain gets in there. Thank you. But yeah, so in all these different things, all right, how you doing, Clive? And same to you. So in all these different things that we're dealing with, how you doing, Sister Beck, and into the deep, and everybody who's on, we have to realize and recognize very quickly that in all our dealings and all the stuff that's going on, right, that we have been called obviously to something greater, but we've been called to innocence, right? In order to be innocent, we should be separated, right? Separate. We are not called to fit in, so therefore we're called to be what? Separate. We're not called to make everybody happy, so you're going to end up sometimes being what? Separate. How you doing, Sister Angela? And thank y'all for the love. Thank you for sharing. We appreciate everybody, right? You're not, you can't, you're not going to function the way everybody else functions. You're not going to live the way everybody else lives. You're not going to operate the way everybody else operates, right? Even the person who came on here earlier, right, talking whatever smack they were talking about something that's not even our belief system. Make it real quick, yeah. We separate very well. So if you try, when you say you said this and you preached this and you did this, that's not even where we at. Oh, and thank you for the born day love. Appreciate you. How you doing, brother Kova? Right? Who is Yehoshua, or who people call Yeshua, Yahuwah, or sorry, Yahushua, etc., etc. Who is he? Well, he is. I don't know. I'm being honest with you, D Money. I apologize. Is this a genuine question? I'm not trying to do this because if it's a thing where you're gonna follow it up with, I'm just being honest. Just state it if it's not. No offense to you, but there's a lot of persons who come on here and get me off track, and I don't really have the time today. We're actually not only finishing this up, but then also too, we're still setting up, for Feast of Tabernacles and everything. So I'm just being honest. Like if it comes up and something else follows with, see, I caught you on this, blah blah. I'm just You know, we deal with a lot of different platforms, a lot of different persons. I'm just letting you know today. So I'll try to answer it quickly that if it's a genuine question, because I don't have as much time, you know, as I normally would anyways, right? So, genuine answer then. Who is Yeshua or Yeshua or Yehashivai or Yahavashai, these different dialects, right? We say Yehashivai at SOC, right? But and if somebody says it different at SOC, it's a dialect. Persons don't get that part of it, right? Nobody wants to study language enough to comprehend what sound comes from what sound. There's people who say Kofi different in different places in the world, right? That being said, um, um, Yehashua is the son of the Most High Yah. He is, in fact, him himself. In our culture, right? This is a cultural question, right? So I'm going to give a cultural answer. In our culture, you have something called the Aleph Ba'it, which now people using modern Hebrew call Aleph Bet. The Aleph Bet or the Aleph Ba'it is original before the alphabet. The alphabet was actually written with the help of somebody who was Hebrew and Canaanite and was hired to bring Greek languages together when all of Greece came together. Much in the way, before somebody says that sounds impossible, much in the way that Gannibal's grandson, right? If you look up a famous poet, famous black poet, who was the grandson of a former slave in Russia, his name is Gannibal. His grandson becomes the greatest poet, Russian poet, at least according to them, and for many, one of the greatest poets to ever live around the world. And he shaped what you now know as the Russian language. So happens a lot more often than what persons think. When people come together, you got to remember Greece was not a country, right? So before there was a such thing as the alphabet, there was this thing called the alphabet, or what people call today the alphabet. The Bible even says that it is the language of all creation. Now, why is that important to your question as far as who is Yehashua? Because he is the bit or the bait, the second character. That second character means the son who comes out the right family, right? Or it can mean son, family, tent, house, etc. Even tabernacle. Excuse me. Right? And so he is the son. Matter of fact, when you would see the Day of Atonement done, which we just did, we didn't do it as far as sacrifice, but we just celebrated the Day of Atonement. When you have the Day of Atonement done, you would have the blood of the ox, which the first character of the Hebrew alphabet is Alav or Aleph, and the blood of the bit, um, the second, or which means son, but also it would be the son of the lamb, right? Or the blood of the lamb, right? So you put the lamb and the ox together on the altar, right? And you get the blood of the Most High commingled, Aleph Bet. And every character that makes up words in Hebrew is made out of Aleph Bet, father-son connection, right? So you can't write words in Avda or Ivrit or Hebrew or Ebra or Paleo Hebrew, all these names they give stuff, or even in modern Hebrew, you can't write any of those words without Aleph Bet, without father-son connection, right? Once you have father-son connection, you have 20 more characters, and now you can begin to make all the words that we use and culturally do it. So the father and the son are one, right? One is a physical manifestation that comes out of a family here on earth, right? Where the two become one here on earth, and one is the source or Abba or Father of all. The two working together as one. Right now, when you get to Elohim, which is Elohim, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Elohim by character is Aleph, Lamed, He, Yad, Mim. If you don't know what that means the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit push us or lead us by their hand. And lead who? Those that are water, blood, and spirit. That's what they means by character. The connotation of the word for us. When we hear that word, we know the characters to be able to put that together. So that points towards Yehashua Mashiach, or Yeshua HaMashiach, as many of you would say. It points towards him being the Son, and everybody knew, whoever the Son was one with the Father. This is why Christ is called a blasphemer, right? If you recall, he's on trial, right? And when he's put on trial, even though Pontius Pilate finds no fault in him, right, he ends up giving in to the pressure, right, not wanting there to be a whole revolt that night, right? And what is it that they put him on trial for? Blasphemy. What did they say that he was doing to blaspheme? They said that he was saying he was the Messiah, right, and his kingdom was not from this earth, right, and that he's one with the Father, right? That's what he was on trial for. That's what to blaspheme is to say that you are Yah, or to say that basically you are Yah, or that basically like you are led by Yah incorrectly and trying to change what he is and you're not. That's what to blaspheme is. So when he would say that he and the Father are one. They consider that blasphemy because they've been looking for the Father's Son on earth to manifest through their bloodline, right? That's the basics of who he is. Now we could talk about him being the lily in the valley, the bright and the morning star. We could talk about him in Revelation. We could talk about, but that's who Yahashua is to us, right? Right. So, how you doing, Dwayne? How you doing? Is it D Boy, D Boy Dre? I don't know if it's D Boy Dre Kid 90. Am I saying it right? I'm not sure. That would be in front of the community though, right? So, and thank you for the question. So back to that though, but we want to be innocent. It's my pleasure, right? We want to be innocent. So that's a quick one. There's other stuff that obviously goes with that, but that's kind of a basic standard if you're talking about culturally, right? Those who are actually Avda, Atz, Yachad Sha'al, who are actually striving and living it every day, that's who he is to us, right? So in all these different things that are going on, we have to recognize and realize very quickly that innocence has been lost. Today we're talking about loss of innocence. Innocence has been lost, very much so. And persons want you and I to believe that that's okay, right? Persons want you and I to defend this place where innocence is lost, right? They want us to defend wickedness more than innocence, right? I know persons aren't going to like this. It's okay. We already did a whole thing. If you want to actually hear, my thought process through kingdom, through a kingdom lens, right? Concerning Charlie Kirk, so be it. But this is why you have persons that have it hard, that it's hard for us to hear. Thank you, Sister Angela. This is why you have persons that it's hard for them to hear. Amen, Sister Beck. And how you doing? Is it Ibby? Okay, how you doing? Right. This is why it's difficult for persons to have conversation concerning Charlie Kirk, because as we can say that, hey, it's wrong that Charlie Kirk was murdered, right? And at the same time say Charlie Kirk didn't stand for righteousness. Because to be in right lawful standing means that you don't break any of these laws, or you try your best to. And if you're sitting up here literally going around trying your best to get paid, it's your business, and I'm not hating on the business plan, right? We have similar business plans, but I stand on business as far as righteousness, right? but he is going around, the West, and trying to spark up conversations and saying that persons of color can't think the same, that they only get jobs because they're persons of color, while telling persons of color, well, if we can only get jobs according to you, the persons of color, then what are we supposed to do? And he says, well, then just work hard. But then you don't want to take into account that these persons work twice as hard to get half as much. You don't take into account that your so-called Secretary of War, that guy, is up there telling persons that the only reason why a lot of generals and Master Chief Petty Officers and sergeant majors and captains and admirals and colonels, etc. The only reason they're up there is because they're women or they're black. Everybody else is okay though, right? Persons can't see how we can say both things simultaneously because we take an innocent stance. I'm not dirtied up by Republican or Democrat. I can take an innocent stance. Innocence says if Obama was against the word, then he was antichrist, or at least had an antichrist spirit. Innocence can tell me if Bush was against the word, then he was antichrist or had an antichrist spirit. If you're against what Christ says, then you're antichrist, right? Many persons in churches, many pastors, many fellow believers, at least so they say they are, had a lot of issues, right? And a lot of things, if we go back and we bring stuff up, we will find a lot of issues with what these persons were doing and what they were saying and how they were treating persons, because they would say stuff like, well, Clinton, Obama, Biden, persons who usually would hang around me usually have that mindset. And so they go, if they still do, a lot of them are coming out of that, but if they still do, they'll say, well, they're called to be the president. They're not called to be a president of just people that believe in the Bible. And I'll be like, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Same thing with Bush, right? Same thing with Bush, Reagan, right? Same thing with Trump. Yeah, they're not here to follow the Bible. None of them are. How you doing, Kevin? Thanks for being part of the community. I hear you, bold servant. None of them are. How you doing, Brother Jermaine? So, but they would pray over and look, pray for leadership, but people even twist that scripture. The innocence in that scripture is you pray for righteous leadership. That's supposed to be over Yahada Sha'al. You don't pray for just any leadership anywhere. You pray for safety for you and peace for you in the city you're in, so you can operate properly. But you're not gonna be in there, right? So you're looking for these different things. Hold on one second. Yes, sir.
Daddy,
Where is he? Oh, he went to the store.
I was scared.
Hmm?
I'm scared.
Oh, okay. All right.
Mom.
All right. So, and all these different things that are going on, right? You have to realize and recognize, right, that in all these different things that are happening, right, and all these different things that are happening and all these different things that are going on, we don't want to be honest about, like, yeah, persons are trying to get us further away from innocence, and they'd rather have you just go ahead and accept. Well, we're going to support evil, right? Because evil looks like us, or we're going to support evil because the evil is closer to my stance. Close to my stance, I'm learning, I'm growing every day, right? I'm getting older and wiser every day, and evil is not, you know, e- close to my stance. It really is not even my stance; it's Yah's stance. But you hopefully you get what I'm saying. Close to what I stand for doesn't get everything done. It'll get close to everything done. But if close to everything gets done, then it means that we still got a lot of stuff that needs to get done, and there can be a lot of evil that finds its way in close. When we were doing some stuff, and I've been learning because I'm putting some stuff together with the brick wall and trying to repatch some things now and things like that on the house. When you go back, when you start putting the brick together, you kind of are supposed to sometimes leave little gaps here or there, right? Because the house might need to move, believe it or not, right? But you also put things in between those little gaps that you put to deter insects or rodents or things from outside, but by every once in a while trying to get in, right? So even though I'm building the house and I'm putting the wall back and stuff like that, I have to also remember, oh yeah, there might be critters that try to get in here. So there's certain things that I get to ensure that it's difficult. You might want to pack certain spots with steel wool or something like that, right? And make sure that you got enough of it to where it's difficult. And so even if they try to chew through it, they'll cut themselves or literally put them. Well, I don't want to be gory, but they'll harm themselves very badly in their vigor because of their vigorous nature, thinking that they're going to get through this hole, right? We cover all the gaps. How you doing? Remember me? Thanks for being on. Right? We try to cover as many gaps as possible. Right? We try to make sure that everything's filled in as much as is humanly possible, right? So that there's very little room. You can have a sliver of hole, right, open for the enemy. And if the enemy can get in there, unrighteousness comes in. We're living in a day where we've lost innocence, and it's cool to not be innocent, right? And it's not, and it's something that's been there for a while, to be honest, right? Right? I'm bad. I'm bad, Shimon, right? That's been around for a minute, right? 60s and 70s. I'm the baddest joker in here, right? JJ coming in doing, or what's his, who's the one that did this? JJ used to do some stuff like that too, similar. But whoever would do, or that was Fred. That was Fred Sanford. Somebody else used to walk up like this too, though, back in the day, right? And I'm the baddest joker. Can't nobody do, or I'm this and that, or I'm wicked with it, or right? It's time for us to be innocent. Like I said, I remember the times being a musician and something, and you wanted somebody to come up and say, "Oh man, that solo was nasty, son." Right? But I'm not. I don't want it. Like, but we don't want to be nasty. We want to be pure. We want to be clean. We don't want to be unclean. The days of uncleanliness, are fading. Well, for us in the kingdom, should be fading quickly. Right? We'll just put that stuff on us. And here's the deal. Your brain doesn't really know the difference. You know what I'm saying? You call yourself the baddest bee, and you don't want others to call you a bee, but you say I'm the baddest bee. But you don't realize every time you call yourself the baddest bee, your body, right, is hearing that you're a bee. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just, I'm sorry. I'm just, you know, I'm getting better. I'm just a bad person, but I'm getting better. I'm not as bad as I used to be. Your body doesn't hear, oh, I'm improving. You just told yourself you're a bad person, and the words that you speak, your body reacts to them the same way as if somebody had jabbed something into you. If you say, ah, I'll never be healthy, your body says, okay. Your body adjusts to what you say. There's power in your words. Well, go on, Audrey. How you doing? Right, there's power in the word. This is why man should not live by bread alone, but by every word uttered out of mouth. Yeah, the way he uses words is perfect. That's right. Death and life is in the power of the tongue. And watch this. And those that love it, those that act, see, that word love doesn't mean you have a great relationship with it. You can like something and not love it. You can like something and hate it. That's why train up a child in the way they should go. There's also another proverb. If you spare it the rod, you spoil it the child. There's also another proverb. He who spareth the rod hateth the child. The word hate doesn't mean that you don't like the child. The word hate means you're ignoring certain signs enough to allow them to go ahead and remain undisciplined, and they're going to go through things because of it. Right? So the power of the tongue, right? Those who know how to speak properly. And matter of fact, that's a husband-wife scripture. A lot of people don't know. Because Proverbs 18:21, it says, death and life is in the power of the tongue, and those that love it will eat the fruit thereof. Before verse 21 is talking to men specifically the whole time. And then verse 22, right behind it, so Proverbs 18:21, death and life is in the power of the tongue, and those that love it will eat the fruit thereof. Then the verse right after it, Proverbs 18:22, says what? It says, he who findeth a wife findeth the bad thing and accept or obtaineth favor from a dawn. In other words, when you find a wife, not a woman, not a girl, not a girl thing, not a boo, not a one hit quitter, right? Not a one night stand. Not just she's pretty on the outside, but when you find a wife by Israelite, by kingdom, by biblical standard, right? When you find a wife, you'll find somebody who knows how to speak properly, because some things she might need to off in your life. She might need to speak against certain things. That's death, right? She also might need to speak some positivity in your life and help you to multiply and help you to get up and feel like you could take on the world. And if nobody's with you, at least you know your wife is one with you, right? That's life. He who findeth that findeth something that is tabah and therefore will obtain. See, a lot of persons missed it. It says a so-called good thing, or we would say tabah thing. And persons go, oh, why is it a thing? Why is she a thing? That's not what it's saying. She's not a thing. Yah loves her. He's not saying she is a thing. And he's not even referring to the marriage as a thing, although you could possibly connect the dots there. He's saying that when you find a wife who can make sure that she speaks properly into your life, right? Multiplying what needs to be multiplying and helping you to get rid of what needs to be gotten rid of, and doing so as one and having your back, and y'all being connected and unified in this forever. He says that, man, you found something that's tabah. That thing right there, that's a thing that you can't let go of, even though many of us still try to, right? Right? Many of us still try to, but that's the thing that you don't have to worry about. He who finds a wife, not finds a girl, not finds a girlfriend, not finds somebody, okay, we've just been going out long enough, and hey, if I don't put a ring on it, then she gonna leave me. When you find a wife, and you must be qualified as a kingdom husband yourself, when you find a wife, you find something that's tabah, and you obtain favor because of it. You obtain what? Favor. And whose favor are we looking for? Yahweh's favor. Whose favor are we looking for? If we're looking for a man's favor, we're looking for the favor of our spouse, our family, and also those who are in the kingdom with us, who are part of the nation. He who finds a wife, you must be therefore a husband, pre-qualified. Persons miss that. Pre-qualified. In our culture, you are qualified to be a husband, right? 3 years before you even get your inheritance. Once you're qualified to be one, and we give you your inheritance, then when you're in your work, one can find a wife. And you'll find it while you're in your work. You'll be looking for somebody that helps to multiply what you're doing. And therefore, because you know she'll do that, you don't mind making sure that you protect her and multiply what she's doing. Two coming together as one. See, that's innocence. But when persons come together now, you need all them prenups, don't you? Because persons aren't getting married for those reasons. They're not getting married pre-qualified. They're listening to Brittany Renner. They're listening to Charles, whatever his face is, the guy that always be cussing and fussing and stuff and everything. You know, they're listening to Red Pill Rhetoric. They're listening to Fresh and Fit. Even though I like a lot of what Abba and Preach have to say, they listen to Abba and Preach, and Abba and Preach aren't trying to live righteously. They're listening to Andrew Tate, sure. They're listening to I forget Pearly Things or whatever her name is online, right? They're listening to we're still listening to Lil Kim. We're still listening to Foxy Brown. We're still listening to Nicki Minaj. Now we're listening to Cardi B. Meg Thee Stallion. Meg Thee Stallion gets up on stage and she made sure, you know, she had a cleavage and everything up, but she made sure she had a tight outfit, but at least it was a pantsuit. But then she made sure that they clapped for you on stage. We're listening for somebody like that to tell us about relationships. This is who we're listening to. We're listening to Biggie Small. Had lyrics so questionable that he said stuff like, "Girl, you look so good. You know, I'd f you with your daddy's what, or you know, or no, I'd s you. Excuse me, girl, you look so good. I'd s your daddy's whatever." Yep, that's very true. D Money, right? Also, too, he who doesn't take care of his family is less than an infidel, right? Responsibilities on both sides. Even the stuff that we're requiring. Where in your Bible does it say that a woman is supposed to cook all the meals? In your Bible, where does it say, right, that a man in providing means that you can't help him with any bills? Matter of fact, the Proverbs 31 woman, she has her own business and she uses it for her family too. Not saying that every woman has to, just saying that's the standard, or that's the one we look up to. We can look up to the Proverbs 31 woman. And if you read before that, Proverbs 31 verses 1 through 9, before you get to Proverbs 31:10, Proverbs 31 1 through 9 is a story that David had told Solomon, and now Solomon is writing about, where it's a woman that's talking to her son about the need of a wife. And says, son, you're going to be doing great things. You're the king now. You got to have this. You got to have this in place. But this is what you're going to need in order to do what you're supposed to as a king. That's what that context is. You said you don't know any of the names. You're not aware of the kind of music. Okay, that's great. Some of us are, so just be careful with it, right? Some of us were familiar with Chuck Brown. He has some stuff in there you should be careful about. Letting marinate. I'm not saying there's not time for Chuck. I'm just saying if you're gonna listen to Chuck, you need to be able to figure out when Chuck is spitting and when Chuck is spitting stuff that's gonna be fire in the way that you don't want it to be. And how you doing, Dava? Is it? Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Right? Or be careful about Chuck Taylor. Right? Chuck Berry. Even persons like, what's her name? I always forget her name. Mama Thornton, Mother Thornton. You know, the person that was hip and was the first so-called gospel artist. You know, she was the Kirk Franklin of her day, and then some. Way more popular, right, than he was. And traveled the world. And then when she went down, as far as popularity, ended up England picked up on who she was and had her come over there and start singing to them. But if you know what she was doing behind the scenes too, and what was happening in her life, and how nobody was really giving her word, they were just saying, you know, be holy, but then, you know, holy is basically just give a false pretense, not be who you truly are. We've had these persons raise us for so long, and nobody's ever thought about, like, you know, the goal is to strive for innocence. Even before you talk about marriage, in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22, you know, verse 21 really says, let us submit ourselves one to another as unto Yahweh. So that's really how we should look at marriage anyways, with these two scriptures coming up. But Ephesians 5:22 is where it says, you know, wives, submit to your own husbands as unto Yahweh, which doesn't mean submit to every man. It's submit to the mission of your husband, and your husband should have the mission of Yah, because your husband should love you as Yahashua loves the assembly and gave himself for it, right? But before all of that, guess what it says in Ephesians 5:19? In Ephesians 5:19, it says, well, first things first, what are you listening to? What hymns do you listen to? What spiritual songs do you listen to? It asks, right? Guard your gates. Today we might ask, what Today we might ask, what television shows are you watching? Brothers and sisters, some of y'all think that your spouses are cheating because you watch television shows where everybody cheat. Are we talking Feast of Tabernacles today? We've been talking Feast of Tabernacles and everything for the whole Holy Day series. We finished the Holy Day series yesterday with Q&A. We're here at the Feast of Tabernacles, so we'll have questions on Thursday and Friday, Q&A on Thursday and Friday. But we're actually going to be dealing with some, just some different words that we have throughout this Monday, all throughout next Monday. But it's not technically Feast of Tabernacles start yet. It starts when the moon comes up. So it technically doesn't start yet. And Shalom family, how is everybody doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in. Come on in. The water is fine. Right? Hopefully all is well with everyone. I apologize if it's dark or anything. I got an umbrella. It's not really raining, but it's raining enough that I need to be careful about our electronics. So we got the umbrella out. How you doing, Elder Tamer? I see you. Or is it Elder Tamer? I think so. Right? But yeah, we have to be righteous, and we have to be willing to be innocent, and we have to be willing to do what Yahweh says. We have to be willing to do what He says, and a lot of persons don't want. Innocence is something that everybody is afraid of. Matter of fact, it's interesting. Innocence sells because as long as it's innocent lies. I was listening to a young woman last night, and she was talking about music and different things, and how and this was a so-called white person, so you can get the context of what I'm saying if you want to use that social construct. And she was talking about how she was talking about Taylor Swift, and how Taylor Swift has a new album. I was not aware of this, and apparently the new album is, her trying to step away from being innocent, because innocence, you have to break away from it at some point. And what happens is, and I'm just going to show the logic. I never thought about it before. I once she said it was bars, but I had never really thought about it in this way. She was saying that basically for music, so-called white girls, many of them are not supposed to like have sex, and the only way that they can break away, right, when they're coming up, when they're young, right, and when they want to do the young, pretty, manure, whatever thing, in so-called white society, you're not supposed to really talk about sex at all, which I'm not necessarily mad at, but hear what I'm saying, follow her logic for a little bit. So she goes, so we're not really supposed, so white girls who are singers, right, if you look at when everybody started, she said not when you see them later, because we're going to explain that in a second, but she said when you look at Britney Spears, when she started in Disney. She's not talking about sex, right? She said when you are talking about we talking about Disney, but not talking about sex. Relentless, is that all you got? Instead of telling me to shut up, maybe you shut up and you go somewhere else if that's how you feel. Telling me to stop yapping and look at the comments. I don't have to look. Why would I look at your comment? You got your 5 seconds. There you go. All right, that's weird. People come on somebody else's stuff and it's like, shut up and look at me tight at how stupid you are. Anyways. So, but you have persons who it's weird. Anyways, you have persons who really don't look at those things or whatever. And she was saying how, when you see Britney Spears when she first came out, innocent little girl, doesn't know anything about sex, all this stuff, and right. But when she wants to break away, what do? You hang around certain black stars, maybe even hang around rappers, and you make sure that you say sex, 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 boom, 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 and then all of a sudden, once you get to a certain place, you start removing yourself from that because that's not really who you're supposed to be, right? And so so now that you explain that you have sex through other platforms, you can go ahead and go back to not necessarily being innocent anymore, but being more who you actually want to be. Ariana Grande, excuse me, or Ariana Grande. I'm not sure how she pronounces it. Forgive me. They say a similar thing for her. I don't know her story that much. If you look at Selena Gomez Same type of thing, right? Very innocent. Nothing about this. I don't know about sex, blah, blah. All of a sudden, it's time to change. And so I go ahead and I start doing a little bit of stuff. I hang around the dirt, the persons that are dirty, or the persons connected to hip hop, or do some stuff with some black singers on it. Next thing you know, I go back to being, okay, that's not really who I am. Miley Cyrus comes up, right? And she's Disney Channel and Hannah Montana and this and that or whatever. And yeah, I'm clean and innocent, pure. How do I get away from that? All of a sudden, I start, taking, my little skinny self and saying that I'm gonna twerk and I'm gonna try and take the word twerk and change it. I'm gonna do some hip hop stuff. Then later out, I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna say, yeah, hip hop's not even really music. It's not anything I really like or whatever. Now that I've gotten what I need out of it, and I say this is closer to who I am. This is a continued thing that happens. I never really thought about it before she said it, but when she was saying it, I was like, yeah, I see that. I hear that, right? Now, and all those different things that's going on, right? What is it? They're playing innocent. What are they saying? What are they really doing? They're playing innocent, right? They're playing innocent. They're not innocent at all, right? How you doing, Jeff? Thanks for being part of the community. And this was a plan, a strategic plan. So we have to be careful too, because sometimes we'll follow some of these persons and we're like, oh, they're so great, and they play innocence, they get what they need, right? Chris Brown, to be fair. Somebody's like, oh, he's just talking about little white girls. He's racist. It's okay, to be fair. I was fair already. But for some of you think that I have to make sure that for every time I mention a white person, you better mention a black person or else you're racist. Okay. Chris Brown, before you knew him, for all the stuff and Rihanna and all that situation, and now these elaborate sex parties and making fun of people and fighting and getting into hip hop battles where he's actually speaking ill of the dead, talking about how people wish, twin, what is it, what are their names? I don't even know the Migos, right? And there was an uncle and and two brothers, and one brother passed away, and then all of a sudden Chris Brown would say, well, and everybody wishes that the one that passed away was you and not your brother, right? But when Chris Brown came out, every single conversation, even though we knew it wasn't 100% right, you could tell, but everything, oh man, they say, Chris, tell us about girlfriends. To girls, you're going to get me in trouble with my mama. Y'all remember, like, he was the sweet, always smiling, was supposed to be like pure, and everybody wanted to support him. And then he got black women behind him, and then he got the other persons he needed to get popular enough, and then, hey, I'll do whatever I want. Remember, Drake came out, right? If that's not enough for you, I went white, I went black, now let's go in between. Right? Or if you want to use these worldly standards, right? Drake came out, and at first, what was Drake? Drake did this, Drake did that. What did Drake do? Drake comes out, he gets the people behind him, especially black women, right? Black women always co-sign him, right? Then also next thing, what happened with the show S Word and Gigs, right? The show that happened and last year, and the show that kind of rocked everything, and Kendrick came up with a lyric and all that. These were persons that came out and were doing all these different things, used to make fun of everybody and stuff like that, especially black women, even though they got black women to co-sign them, and then once they got co-signed, they go on the show and they speak bad about them, right? The same thing with all these persons who are feigning ignorance or feigning innocence, excuse me, and then later on have to feign ignorance. It's a way of getting to where you're supposed to. You pretend to be innocent, and then you get innocent because persons deep down inside want you to be innocent. This is why all these persons who are saying everybody should be able to do what they want to do, but as soon as you do something they deem not to be innocent, they come at you, don't they? Everybody should be able to do what they want to do. There's a lot of cats, black, white, and in between, that was pro-Trump, right? Because he was innocent. He was going to bring stuff back, and he was going to bring things back with so-called God and all these things. And now he's doing things, and now everybody and their mama's like, we didn't see this coming. I mean, well, if you didn't see it coming, especially since this is the second time through, something crazy. And by the way, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm not talking about dirty stuff like politics. I'm talking about innocent things, clean things like the law. Right? Real spiel, real talk. We're focused on so many different things except what's innocent. There's a little bit of MK Ultra stuff in there too, right? We can talk about, but even in that, persons. Well, I won't say all that. That's not necessarily true. But can we pray today? What are we praying for today? I'm sorry. We pray from time to time. We start off with prayer, and even in pray is petition. You know, petition and prayer doesn't always have to be like your hands are put together. We pray 24/7. Everything we do should be prayer. Should fall under the category of prayer, even praise and worship, all of it. But if there's a specific thing that's there, right? If we're led to it, no problem. How you doing, Auntie Marion? Shabbat shalom to you. Well, early Shabbat shalom to everybody. Right? To be on one accord. Okay, we'll see how Holy Spirit does. I touched nothing suddenly. But yeah, I don't think there's anything if we can. But once again, we can be praying for that right now where we're going, right? But even in being on one accord, even in that factor, even in what we're talking about, right? We have to still be in a position to where what? To where we're making sure that we're focusing on innocence. Because even if we pray, not focusing on innocence, then our prayers go no higher than the ceiling. And that is what, according to to James chapter 1, according to that, that's what makes you um, double-minded. When we would pray or when we would ask for things, we would petition Yah for things that we don't even do what we're supposed to do. Right? So even, if we're led to that, I would ask, prepare your hearts and your minds even beforehand, right? Are we clean enough? And I'm not saying, so this is when I get where if we don't explain this away, I can get where somebody who is Christian or somebody who's talking about grace and grace alone and stuff could have a problem with what I'm saying. Because yeah, we're not gonna always hit the mark because we are within ourselves incapable of, because of the flesh that we're housed in. It's impossible now. That's why we have to have a glorified body that we're given to get us back on track. So I'm not here to tell you that you should never make a mistake ever in life. Yeshua died for those mistakes, right? But he didn't die for us to live and bathe in them. He died, right? And for them to not just be mistakes or missteps, because some of us are just stepping in sin and don't care about it, right? Some of us are stepping in sin and trying to call it missteps when it was never a misstep to begin with, right? But our goal is to be perfect as our Father in heaven is, and to use the word. And whenever we're able to use the word or the law, or even repent and go back and be through the prism of the word, it causes us to step in righteousness. That's right. We may not hit the mark, but we must race toward it. That's right. We must press towards it. And it says you feel like I feel you. I like when I can go a bit without all the gotta choose side stuff, like the Beatles said, let it be. Well, yeah, well, let it be as far as for me, let it be as far as righteousness or truth. Amat. Right? Let it be exactly what it is, and let us not change it, which is why we're heavy on etymology, heavy on holding things accountable and stuff like that. Now, once again, innocence. This is where it gets tough, because if we want to be honest, the persons that lead the beast, that lead your countries, that lead your corporations, etc., they are not innocent, nor are they striving to be. And this is one of the biggest things as a problem. How you doing, Bruder Richard? And if mi hermana Yuselis is watching the I'm about to say the wrong name. Adelaide, I'm forgetting little man's name. I'm about to call him Michael, but that's not it. Right. But thank you all for being on, and thank you everybody who's with us physically, virtually, etc. We appreciate you. Every knee will bow. Gave us John 3:16. Okay. Yeah. So nobody wants. We don't want to talk about this stuff. And be honest, like, if we're gonna have righteous, Matthias, thank you, Matthias, Matthew, right? So if we're gonna be, or Mattatayah even, right? So if we're gonna be honest about what's going on, once again, if we're gonna be what? Honest about what's going on, we like to get persons that are not innocent and put them in so-called office. Now I say we sparingly because I don't vote, but for those of you who still do, right? I used to, a long time ago, but I've stopped. But those of you who still do are still on the right or the left or independent, which really is a way of you telling everybody that you can be more clear-minded before you still vote right or left, because that's basically the only choices that many of you think are available, or are available and won't work towards getting something else available, right? But if you are somebody who's into that, then we have to be honest. You like to have persons that are not innocent be in office. Right, that whole thing of voting for the lesser of two evils. If both sides are evil, then no matter who I vote for, I'm voting for evil. If I'm spending hours going out and buying food and buying clothes that say Trump or say Obama or say Biden or say Bush or say Clinton or say Carter or say Reagan or say Nixon or say whomever, right? If I'm moving to make sure that everybody knows that I've got persons will have a donkey on the side of that car, but nothing talking about Yahashua. Persons will have an elephant on the back of that car, but nothing to say Yahashua. Right? We're protected from it where we are, praise Yah, but we're not that far. I mean, basically, if you go, well, persons who came last year, we weren't, we had to split up time between our location we're in now and the location we were in last year to at least start the first 4 days, the first half of things. And you saw very clearly, if you didn't know, we were in Trump country and they were watching us and they were putting spotlights on us and all that stuff because they didn't like the fact that a bunch of black folk not only showed up but were outside camping. It was a problem for them. So until we came to where we are today, we're protected. That first half was something else. Right? How you doing, Sister Barbara? Welcome on. Right? So, right? But no, but you would come in this place and you would hear all these persons talking about, oh yeah, this and we want righteousness and we have biblical values and blah blah. Well, we can't. And literally, when the police showed up, they were ready to go in and stuff like that. Somebody had pulled me out. The brothers did what they were supposed to do. They weren't doing anything there, but they were all standing next to their car, seeing what the next move was. I walked out, talked to them real quick, and explained, yeah, this is biblical. I'm a pastor. We come here every year or whatever. We came here again and we wanted to go ahead and do what we are supposed to do. They messed up, our stuff with where we were supposed to be or whatever, where we were supposed to have the first half paid for and then we were supposed to pay the second half. Instead, they only gave us the second half of our stuff, but took all our money. We had to figure that out. In the meantime, though, we have no place to stay, so we were able to get a spot over here, right? To make sure that we can go ahead and have a spot where everybody could be. And he was like, oh, okay. And then, but he walked around. He tried to see what he could say. He said, well, the only thing I can say, since they called me out here, only thing I can say, to be honest, Pastor, is that, your cars have to be, it's a one-way street, so they have to be facing the way out. Outside of, if they're parked in the street. Other than that, I can't say anything, right? And they still messed with us and messed with us and messed with us to where we had to find a way to split up early. Some people had to come over here and some people had to stay over there. But I'm saying all that to be said, somebody would be sitting up there and saying these persons that are in power are innocent. They're not innocent, right? The persons that lived in that neighborhood that we were doing the camping and stuff in, those are persons that are the leaders of that city. Whatever it's called, Cartersville, Georgia, not too far from where we are. Yeah, the leaders over there made it a point. Those were the persons who were in charge. They called the person who owned the house that was okay with everything that we were doing. And that person was like, man, I'm sorry. I think this is hateful and spiteful. They felt ashamed about having to call us. But they were like, they keep calling me and they keep saying they're going to try and come for you. And I was like, I'm not mad at you. This is your house. You got to do what you can to protect your house and your family. Right? But those are the leaders. And nobody want to have honest conversation. When you come through those places, right? We passed it when I told you guys we were down here last week or earlier last week, and we were down here a couple days. Right? We were down here and saying, and you see it as soon as you come down. We passed the same place on our way to a different campground. It's really close to where we are, and we were chilling out there or whatever. Now we were closed off from it. But, there were women there that were looking and blah, blah, but they saw me doing a live session in the evening. They heard me preaching. And then all of a sudden it went from weird looks that I was getting to they were saying amen. And then the next day, they started approaching us. Oh, what do you do? Blah, blah, right? But before that, before they heard the Bible, before they heard the word, before they did it, what was the first thing? Oh, something wrong with them. Right? Now, I say all that to say that we like putting these persons in office. These persons are not innocent. Do you know that police officers are not supposed to have anything on their record in order to become police officers? That's pretty much how police officers work. I'm sorry. Question: Feast of Tabernacles is a full week. Can you work on any of those days? You're not supposed to, but if you haven't been able to get off work or you weren't able to set it up, that's between you and y'all. Do the best that you can with that. Amen. So, yeah. So try to do the best that you can with that. But yeah, we're not supposed to do any servile work if it's possible. We know you're in the land of your captivity. We know many persons haven't learned yet, and we know that many persons may not be in a situation, or at least may not feel they're in a situation yet, to where it is obtainable to actually say, I'm gonna step out on faith and do it, because there's a lot of pressure to take care of you, yourself, your community, your family, and make sure that you keep your job. right? But do the best that you can is what I would say. All right, but so I'm sorry, where were we at? Hey, how you doing, brother Noel? So yeah, but we like to vote persons in that we know aren't innocent, right? Like everybody trying to make when George Bush was there, everybody had to make George Bush this, whatever, But George Bush, druggie. Jobs are supposed to do that, but a lot of persons don't set it up with the HR in the beginning, or know how to set up or fill out the paperwork and say, hey, I am, a Hebrew Israelite. This is what we believe. Or, you could even say, I'm part of Servants of Christ, and you could ask me for a form, and I could fill it out, and I could give you the verses and scriptures if there's extra stuff that's necessary. We've done that plenty of times before for persons. But yeah, persons are learning. We didn't know that stuff in the beginning, so persons are learning. But I'm sorry. Where were we at? Where were we at? I keep. I'm sorry. I got to get back on track because I'm losing track. Where were we at? We put persons in office who we know aren't innocent. Police officers. So most places will say police officers are supposed to have no record. The problem with this is that everybody does something wrong. Everybody got some dirt on them, just about. I'm not trying to say if the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, take it off. Right? Hey, Viv. We just talked about the word rapture yesterday, literally. And if you know what rapture means, all this stuff about y'all joking about it and stuff like that doesn't even make sense because that's not what it means. But if you come on here to troll, I guess you did a decent job. But, do better. Thank you, moderators. So, and thank y'all for the love. How you doing, Sister Shirley, if I didn't say so already? Um, so, anyways, staying focused. See what I'm saying? Staying focused. Staying focused. Discipline through distractions, right? Staying focused. So yeah, police supposedly all have nothing on their record, or just about nothing on their record, so they can become police officers. But really, what happens is they found out is that basically all that's happening is these persons who were able to hide what was on their record or had these things hidden for them. And so since they had these things hidden for them, right? Or they know how to hide their dirt really well, you just can't find it. Or they come from families to where, if they get arrested for that, somebody will just take them home to their father. But if somebody else gets arrested, they put it on your record, even if you don't deserve it, right? So because they came from different places, a lot of these police officers, right, are persons that simply can hide their dirt better than everybody else, right? So you think that the persons that are leading you are the best and the brightest, when really they're actually the best at being the dirtiest. Now, are they genuinely trying to help your community? Maybe, but if they're great at hiding dirt, then we shouldn't be surprised that a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are guilty of doing dirt. Okay, glad the device is charged. Praise God. Right, you see what I'm saying? We shouldn't be surprised that the officer, right, the officers do dirt when they actually are the greatest. They get hired. Part of the reason they get hired is because you can't find dirt on them. Now, somebody would say, well, that's you making a lot of assumptions. That's not me making a lot of assumptions. That's based off of studies that police stations themselves have made themselves and verified. Right? But we're not interested in true innocence. Matter of fact, we like things that even look innocent, or at least look innocent enough for us. You know how I can tell this? Right? To all my sports fans, to all my NFL fans, or to all that bet on the game, or whatever it is that causes you to watch it, to those who bet on the game because you do your fantasy stuff and all that. I haven't done fantasy in a minute, right? I don't know if any brothers are even interested in that. I don't even know. I be thinking about it from time to time, but I'd have to give too much attention to it. I don't know if I want. But those who like fantasy and all that and pay attention to the NFL, have you ever thought about this? In the NFL, all of you want your quarterbacks to be leaders. Is that correct? My NFL fans out there, is that correct? Is that a correct statement? If you follow whatever your team is, you want your quarterback to be your leader, right? You said you need to think like a criminal to pass the police exam. There you go. Right? Right? Is that a true statement? That if you have an NFL team, your quarterback is your leader, right? You want him to be your leader. You want him to sound a certain way. You want him to carry himself a certain way. You don't want him to say certain words. Matter of fact, Colin Cowherd would even go as far as saying, I don't want him to wear a hat backwards, right? He's not supposed to say bad things about the up and coming team. He's supposed to take none of the credit when they win. He's supposed to take all the credit when they lose. That's what makes him a great quarterback. When the reality is that's just what you want. That's what you've been trained since you were little, that your quarterback should sound like. But the reality is that the same quarterback that you say that about, when they put a mic on him and your quarterback is cussing everybody out, you don't think twice about the double-minded, the dual nature, the evil and the righteousness that you say have to exist in both. You don't think twice about it, do you? Hmm. Right? Patrick Mahomes is cussing everybody out the whole game, and then at the end of it, he comes up, oh man, well first, give him. I can't do Patrick Mahomes voice, but first give him honor to God, and no, no, you was just cussing everybody out the whole time, and saying you're gonna f them up, and saying we're gonna f these boys up, and we're gonna kill them, and this and that or whatever, because it's a gladiator sport. In gladiator sports, gladiators are slaves, and gladiators become the most popular, and they like being slaves. You know. I'm not trying to be anti-LeBron. LeBron, if you hear this, I don't hate you or nothing. I'm just making an honest assessment, right? LeBron James about to play as a slave for 23 years. Gladiator. Excellent at what he does. Excellent at what he does, right? Well, he's a billionaire. He's got this business and that business. He's not running for. He likes the accolades. That's part of what you do it for. No, I do it for the love of the game. Really? Well, then stop playing for millions of dollars. Just go around and play. I mean, you great enough, you probably can make a couple million a year. That's enough, right? Yeah, pay the panda. Right? They love to, the gladiators loved. We have this weird thing that we think gladiators died every single time. Sometimes, depending on who was in charge, they did, unfortunately. But that was a normal thing, that you killed off your gladiators, that you killed off your slaves. They make you money. Slaves make money. That's why you keep the slaves healthy. You think the slaves are kept healthy for the slaves are kept healthy because if they win enough championships, remember, all these owners basically, even though they tell us this is not exactly true, but they don't really make as much money off of owning these teams as you think. Right? But we don't care if Patrick Mahomes cusses anybody. We don't care if Tom Brady cusses everybody out. Just get in front of the mic and make sure that you get up there and you all shucks and you cry about your father and this. And I'm not saying, excuse me, none of those emotions are true. What I'm saying is we don't really care about innocence. Just be what we want you to be, or what we were taught you should be, and we'll call that innocence. Right? We're not trying. We don't care that we don't care if Ben Roethlisberger, is sad but true. The majority of persons don't care that Ben Roethlisberger was out there forcing women. Not, he got caught not just once but twice, and served no time for it. We're not just talking about he cheated. We're talking about he forced a woman. Right? We don't care. We don't care enough to be trying to figure out, well, hey, whatever happened with that Vince McMahon thing? Y'all remember? Everybody was like, oh, Vince McMahon, he was married, he was faithful. They even tried to put a movie out about it. This man was R-wording women left and right his whole career. And when others were doing it, and one guy even R-worded a woman, right, and we just looked the other way. See, if WWE, right, formerly WWF, formerly WWF, that's too easy. I don't even really want to mess around with that, because some persons would get so upset or frustrated or be so saddened, because I'm just hitting the tip of the iceberg with some of these persons, right? Y'all know, like Jimmy Superfly Snuka, if you remember, Cat used to go up on the top ring. It would do the crossbody drop on the person laying down, or it would be has that famous one where he was on the top of the gate. I think it was at Madison Square Garden, and jumped down on the dude or whatever, right? And everybody loves him for that. And everybody says, and yeah, brother this, and he was a great Polynesian and all this stuff. Hey, don't forget that Vince McMahon made sure that they hid the fact that they paid somebody off, and they made sure that there was no court case that came out, because the woman that was taking care of him because he was high, a woman that was asked by the WWE, or at least somebody that worked in WWE, to look after Jimmy Superfly Snuka. And she took that on, even though I think Jimmy was married too, and then ended up offing her. And it was known he offed her. And then finally there was new evidence brought back while he was sick at the end of his life. And he basically said, well, not only is he sick, but he's not immortal, or he's not in he doesn't have the mental capacity to stand trial. That happened recently. He passed away. his daughter resting. Everybody acts like everything was straight. He was the greatest guy. They hid the fact that he was offing people. They hid the fact about Vince McMahon. They just brought back, if you know this name, Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, right? It's shown. We have evidence of it that he was R-wording the woman that brought it out about Vince McMahon the last 2 times. He was R-wording her too and was going to come back, and they were using her as a thing, saying, hey, if you come back, you can do this, 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 and this to her. And it was disgusting, nasty thing. Right? I mean, and that's the tip of the iceberg. Hulk Hogan, need I say more? If you know about that, not just the racist stuff he said, but how it came out. He came out of the racist stuff because he was in an open relationship with his friend. And he was doing that after he had gotten divorced recently from his wife. He got divorced recently from his wife because he was sleeping around with his daughter Brooke's high school classmate. But we don't care. We want him to come out there to that American made music and say, you know, say your prayers and eat your vitamins, brother. That's what we want. We don't care. We put them up. You're not putting persons up because they're innocent. You're putting persons up because supposedly he's strong. He says eat your vitamins. He's telling you how healthy he is while he's losing his hairline. I'm sorry. That might have been. I apologize. Right, Hulk Hogan has passed away. I try to respect people whether they're alive or dead, anyways. But that might have been a little disrespectful. My fault. I didn't mean to be. I really did. But I just heard myself back in my head, or Holy Spirit just rewound it for me. I apologize if that was insensitive. I didn't mean anything by that. All right, well, maybe I did. I just apologize. Forgive me. That might have been too far. But I'm just saying, you know, like in all these different things that are going on, they don't care. We don't really we be sitting there talking about innocence. We talking about innocence. Everybody's like, we're so surprised about TD Jakes. TD Jakes been showing signs of that for the longest. We're so surprised about Tyler Perry. Really? Really? Tyler Perry? The man that got famous for dressing like a woman. We're surprised that he's bisexual. The man who would make sure that light-skinned dudes were always the hero, and the light-skinned dudes had to be oiled up and greased up, whether on stage or in a movie. Right? And he was going to be the hero. I sounded like Peter. Might have been. I got some Peter in me every once in a while. Right? Some Simon too. Right? We got surprised that dude, the dude who was talking about dropping it like it's hot on other dudes while wearing the stuff or whatever, the dude that basically was making it a point to show like us as a minstrel show. And I'm not saying he never had anything positive, but showed us as a minstrel show. We're surprised that that guy would not only be going back and forth, it would be more so interested in men, but be interested in the white man. No, once again, no shit. I'm just saying the signs, right? If you attracted to whoever, you attracted to whoever. That's on you. I'm talking about him specific, where he was making it a point to say all this stuff, say bad things about men, say bad things about black men, right? Dress up like a woman and all this, and then somehow, some way, we're surprised, right? He mistreated black women. He mistreated Monique. He misrepresents a lot of stuff. He does a lot of stuff that's effeminate. He talks bad about men because his father was in his life, all this stuff. And then we're surprised that he cheated, or not even cheated, you know, he was just having relations with allegedly, with a young white male. Or that oh yeah, you know, we're surprised that he even would be having sex. How are we surprised when he's got a child? We're surprised that he's lying. How are we surprised that he's lying and he's been caught several times over? I'm surprised that he would stop, you know, that he just used God to get where he needed to, and he got black women to help him out, same way that we talked about with all those other celebrities earlier, right? Doing the same thing. How are we surprised? We don't care if somebody's actually innocent. We want somebody to be innocent enough, whatever that means. So we just want to get whoever's popular, we just assign certain attributes to the person. Excuse me. Tyler Perry is getting, excuse me. Tyler Perry is getting 500 persons to show up per show on the chitlin circuit. He must be righteous. Same thing like, oh, so-and-so is on social media and they're preaching and teaching, or or they're getting 5,000 persons on their live session, they must be righteous. No, it just means that they got 5,000 persons on there, and that maybe they even have paid for some of the numbers that we're finding out that a lot of the young stars are doing and stuff like that and caught up in. You said got you thinking about Boondocks. Had Granddad all oiled up. Yeah, you remember that Boondocks episode, right? That now doesn't belong to Aaron McGruder. Doesn't belong to, the diaspora. Belongs to somebody else. He should have never signed away the rights. But once again, we forget that all these persons, go into these deals and stuff, and not thinking because we haven't been trained properly. This person who had all that stuff together was given some money, and then make sure, or was given, somebody else was given ownership because they said, "Well, promote your stuff," and now all of a sudden it's not yours because they promote your stuff. Right, but that's another piece, right? But I'm just saying all this to say we have a lot of persons where we don't. Once again, this whole thing, the idea of innocence, we don't look at the biblical context and the biblical concept of what innocence truly is. Yeah, not only did the show get canceled, but he doesn't make any money off of it because he had sold the rights before. And remember, they fired him. That's why season 4 was terrible, because he was like, "I'm not going for this. I'm not going for that. That's not what it is. That's not the heart of the show." They wanted to change characters. They wanted to get rid of. Matter of fact, they wanted to get somebody to do Granddad's voice, John Witherspoon, but they couldn't find anybody that could do it well enough, so they had to pay him for the whole season. Um, that's why you have persons that sounded different or looked different or were acting different or the drawing was there or wasn't following the same stuff because it was going off of what somebody else was saying. And how you doing, Lathan? Thanks for being part of the community, right? So he lost the show, and he had no rights basically to it, and he still does. So all the stuff that he did and all that stuff, somebody else now gets money. So when you see Boondocks on any of this stuff, it's not going to him. It's something he gets credit for. It's something that in our community we give him credit for, right? And other writers that wrote with him and stuff. But yeah, it's not his. That's why it didn't sound like him at the end. It didn't look like him at the end, right? It didn't look like all the other stuff. Matter of fact, Boondocks to me, although I love the show, Don't get it twisted. Well, I'm sorry. I really appreciate certain things and the prism that they're using to show the show. There's obviously issues with the show as far as some things we would call sinful, right? But I like the way that the show is used to really enhance a lot of issues that are going on in all communities, especially the black community or especially in the United States corporation, right? That being said, in all those different things that are going on, right? Even in all that, it's the show to me. Actually, the first Boondocks I know is looking at it in in the Washington Post, basically growing up, or in the New York Post, right, in the cartoon satires and stuff, and seeing it in there. That's the comic strip. That was the first place I remember seeing the show and reading it and having to learn, like, what is he saying here? What is he blacking out here? Oh, okay, they saying N-word. They saying about, oh, okay, right? And not knowing for a long time because of innocence, right? Literally, little, and I listened to music and stuff that had the N-word in it. I'm just saying, I didn't think like that all the time yet, or at least at that time, so I didn't know what he was saying, right? But that's that introduced me to a lot of stuff where I had to start looking, because I won't say I had the most comfortable experience growing up in our diaspora, but my father did very well, and so even though I hung out with a lot of cats that were rough, that wasn't necessarily always my experience, in my everyday life, right? That was something that I coveted for whatever reason, but it wasn't mine, So I hung out with the dealer, but the drug dealer experience is not mine per se. I've had bullets whiz past my head, but that experience is not necessarily mine, or that daily experience. You're always worried about it or whatever. After a few days, I never, you don't think about it again, or at least until it happens another time when you put yourself in a bad situation again, right? But those things are prevalent, and I like the way that the show brings those things out. But once again, a lot of us, innocence is passe, or innocence is something there we don't really care if something's innocent. And so even with a lot of stuff in the Boondocks, or a lot of stuff with Kendrick Lamar, or a lot of stuff with I don't know these congresspersons' names, but I'm seeing the face. But a lot of persons are saying some things that are really damaging to us, and we'll let it go. Right? Persons will say a lot of stuff that's damaging. This is why, I love my brother, but he's gone so far with it, and he's a big name. I don't even know if he would know that I say this, and saying this, and I don't even know how hurt he would be nowadays by it. But brother George, or you know him as Conscious Lee, we both came up in a TikTok game together, and if you first started following me, we were basically both activists, pretty much only, or at least only known for our activism. Over time, persons learned that I was a pastor and started seeking other things from us virtually, but yeah, we used to have several conversations. Him, myself, but T Nathan, T Nathan Lokius. Those of you who know, Harbinger of the Fold, stuff like that. Persons who got really big, but Conscious Lee, he was the one, and we knew it. And I used to talk to him stuff. I even had him on the podcast and stuff before. We used to have all types of conversations. I had him on the old YouTube channel before they took that down, and we would have a lot of conversation. And I told him a long time ago, and I'm still obedient to it, right? Like, this might be the most I've ever talked about that conversation, but I made a promise to him a long time ago. I said, hey man, where you're headed is where a lot of us won't go. You're gonna become the man. How you doing, Mo Desire, so to speak? You're gonna get the views. Like, it's kind of done. Like, it's it the, you're skyrocketing. They tried to take down several of his channels too, and no matter what they did, he kept coming back and kept coming back and kept coming back stronger. Right? It was very clear, from the beginning, that he had the stuff together. He knew how the algorithm stuff was working, all that stuff. It was very clear from Jump Street, that he was going to get to where he got, and I'm proud of him for getting there. Legit, right? If you don't know who I'm talking, some of you know who I'm talking about, some of you don't. But he's, made it to very high places, especially in the political, the political prism, the political arena. He's very highly sought after, very highly thought of, and can speak with the best of them when it comes to apologetics or debate. If you're going to talk to that brother, you better have your stuff together, right? We even did some debate and stuff before. Excellent brother. But I told him a long time ago, I said, you are our leader. You're going to be, in a sense, our leader if you do this right. And I told him, like, so-called black folk want to protect you. I told him that. So-called black folk want to protect you, but I said, here's the deal. I was like, when you get to a place, though, to where you start putting, and if anybody hears this, I'm not trying to put shade to it, but just being honest, if you start getting to a place where you put LGBTQ plus first before your people, like it seems like you're doing, I'm telling you right now, a lot of persons are not going to respect it, right? And you're going to lose a lot of that. So you're going to have to make your choice, because I told them, you're either going to become the mascot for them, or you'll be somebody who will lead your people, but you're not going to get both. And he made his bed in it, and it's become very clear that he's, decided, and he's not LGBTQ plus, and he's not wrong to defend somebody's humanity and all that. I'm just saying, everything out of him, is going to be usually around the prism of that, and he's going to try his best to make sure he doesn't hurt the feelings of them. And there's been a couple things that have happened even in his career, to where he almost got so-called canceled. Nobody really gets canceled, but went through that whole thing where persons didn't like the fact that he actually began to say things that the LGBTQ plus didn't like, especially because it was more black oriented. And so he went ahead and he stepped away from that, or he said things that were against so-called black persons, and he didn't mind, like, sullying in our name, right, to make sure that somebody who's doing something that's not of our culture is put before us as a people, right? And so, he's made his bed. A lot of persons would call him innocent, or say that he's clean, or say that he's pure. We need to no, he's not. As much as, and brother George, if you ever hear this, I'm small time, I'm small potatoes now, right? But if you ever hear this, I haven't changed on this. You can't be in a position to where you serve two masters. You said it's more important. Sure, it's more important to be part of a righteous nation than a black community. What I'm saying, so in that same vein, is, to me, less important to try and support homosexuality than to tell persons stop being racist against our people. Sure, stop being racist against everybody, but stop being racist against our people, I think, is a better narrative of any kind than it is to say, stop, LGBTQ plus must be respected first, right? Because just like this, if we go even to somebody, and this person, this name is problematic now, especially after some of the stuff that's come after his death. But even if we want to go to somebody like a Ravi or a Ravi Zacharias, right? Who brings up other persons. So I'm not really quoting him, but he's quoting other persons. Yeah, like it's when somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I noticed that you're talking about black persons, but you're not talking about homosexuality, and why is it, and why won't you put them this and blah blah? Don't you know they go through the same thing?" This is an even belief system, but not until what 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it was still considered to be taught. That doesn't mean it's always right just because. But I'm saying it wasn't that long ago that persons broke away from this as being the teaching. Still is in a lot of books, by the way. You know, somebody can choose who they want to have sex with, right? But somebody can't choose the color of their skin. I mean, some do after the fact, but that's different, right? But somebody can choose who they have sex with. Somebody can't choose the color of their skin, right? So, in that essence, in that regard, yeah, you know. And once again, that's not our mo at SOC, right? Never has been, never will be. And if somebody's doing something, you know, show me that they're doing it, and we'll make sure that we deal with it, right? Right? You said the black community is not focused. Well, some are, some aren't, depending on who we call them black, right? That's why we get into that whole so-called thing. Remember, even these terms like mixed race and all that stuff doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a mixed race. There's no such thing as race unless you're talking about competition. The race is actually the competition, and it's supposed to be based on the competition of species, right? But there's no such thing as mixed race. When somebody says I'm mixed race myself, I've said that a couple times just so persons get the memo. But the reality is you're not mixed race. Whoever your father is, that's your blood. Whoever your mother is, that's your DNA. The two become one, and you see what nation they're part of. Whatever nation they're part of, that's the nation you're part of. Period. If somebody says I'm part of a black nation, you got to be Kush. You got to be Kemet, right? When a person say the black community, blah blah, whatever. Okay, who are we talking about? Because we just lump everybody into the same boat. So we can say, so you know, it's like when we say, man, you know what, black people were bullying me when I was growing up, and white people didn't bully me as much. Okay, question: did you live around black people more than white people? Because if so, you probably got bullied. Proximity, or it's like, you know, black on black crime. If you were around black people, you probably experienced crime from black people. If you're around white people, you probably experienced crime from white, so-called black people, so-called white people. If you were around Asian people, you probably experienced crime from Asian people. If you're around, you know what I'm saying? So even in that, we have to be once again. If we're talking about over here, how we see through the prism. So if you're talking about that, yeah, but that's another person's argument. Like the so-called black man had da da da. Yes, the so-called white man had da da da. The so-called black Hebrew Israelite had da da da. The so-called Christian had da da da. You know, but we talking about nationality here, right? So in this, so I'm with you if we're talking about even in the world. If we're talking about in the kingdom, though, right? That's a whole different thing, right? I know that I'm black. I've even said this before. I know that if I go to a courtroom, I'm not black, right? Because that's going to work against me. If I happen to be somewhere where I know that, once again, using this corporation, using something that I'm doing, or using the LLC, a trust, whatever, or this so-called term black, as long as it's something that's there, right? But that's being in the world, but I'm not of that. I'm of Israel. I'm of Negro. Even Negro doesn't mean black. It became something that means black. See, even in all these terms. So, and all that. But once again, it's about innocence. What is the pure or innocent word by itself before it was muddied or marred? It's like when a person talking about the ankh. Why do you wear an ankh? Why would you wear an ankh? Because before it was sullied and turned into something that supposedly is about worship, it had nothing to do with that. You know, so that's not something that it's not confusing to me, or it used to be, because I was like, I knew this stuff, but everybody in Christian church was telling me how I was a bad person, and then a lot of Hebrew Israelites who act like Christians were like, yeah, that's bad, because, but it's like you never studied. It's like when my wife, she wears and sometimes wears, very nice stones and stuff. And she was wearing a stone. And she was at a service, one of the last services that we were in the church. And the pastor, who was a friend of ours, didn't like it. And low key, got the pastor who was guest preaching to come up and he whispered in the ear. And more than likely, and I didn't notice it at the time. When I went back and I looked at the tape, so to speak, I was like, oh, that's how it happened, right? And my wife told me some things too, and that we were able to put the piece together. That's what happened. But basically, he didn't like the fact she was wearing the stone, right? And she wears the stone. She teaches the children at the time and all that stuff. She wears the stones all the time. It wasn't anything unrighteous. Wasn't any witchcraft. It was just precious stones that the Most High has made. And she was using, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. I feel like I'm wrong on this. So forgive me if I'm getting the wrong stone. I think it was obsidian or something like that, right? Which we know the uses of obsidian. If you don't look it up real quick, it's not on some witchcraft stuff, right? So she's just wearing it, and then the woman brings her up, and you can tell the woman's saying something, and she's not. You can see my wife. She's trying to be nice and everything, but you can see her head is shaking and stuff. And then eventually she says, "Yeah, she was telling me, take it off, blah blah. You don't need that. That's against the will of Yah." And we were like, "Whoa, whoa, really?" you know? It was like, "Whoa, why? What happened?" But that's somebody who's either ignorant and really wasn't even. She didn't have no problem with it. It was the guy who's supposed to be like a friend of ours who we were helping him at the time with what they were going through, right? But made sure that somehow, some way he did right. So there's a lot of persons who will change stuff up. So when we look at it in its pure sense, in its pure form, in your innocent form, in your original form, right? What is it that you what is it that you look like? That's interesting. I've never been called that before. Is it because I'm big and black? I mean, it's the same thing as when people say Bob Marley or say anything like that. As a black guy with with facial hair and long hair. So the Mark Henry thing, I guess. I mean, we don't look alike, but to you, all black people look alike, right? You said she was trying to control, which is witchcraft, exactly. So the pastor herself, I think that was her position, pastor. She was the one that was the witch and trying to control and manipulate, right? Persons forget if you go into a place where the streets are paved with gold, gold is a precious stone. It's an element. It's on the periodic table, right? It's elemental. If in the gold effort, right? If in the gold effort they had 12 precious stones, those are elements, right? The Bible says that when Yah looks down from the heavens, Yah describes what he sees when he looks down through the earth as lapis lazuli. That's a stone. That's an element. you know. But that person was doing that. Why? Because of all these different things that are going on and all this control, right? We take away the innocence. When Yah created lapis lazuli, he didn't create it to control anybody, but he created obsidian. He didn't create it to do anything to anybody, but he created rainbow obsidian. He didn't do that. When he created the rainbow, he didn't do that so that you can go ahead and turn it into by his stripes you were healed and turn it into some weird stuff. He created what he created to be pure. That's why we go back to the original etymology as often as possible. Sorry, any serious advice on how to combat the under the table Jewish shadow government? Oh, wow. I don't know if I would have enough time for that, and I'd have to be careful in the language I would use, anyways, because, they'll take me down for that. Right? Right? Uh, yeah. And by the way, my son, he was wearing last night, he was wearing his Take the Rainbow Back shirt. You know? There's nothing wrong with the rainbow or the rainbow being its original form, but once again, we don't like it if it's innocent. We don't like stuff. That's why there's something called the law of first mention. The law of first mention, you go back to the original. Yeah, I'm not going to really go deep into it. I would just say if you want to get rid of that stuff, you have to separate from the system, and then you have to begin to make sure that you are crafting a nation. That's what we're supposed to be anyways, is a nation coming back together. How you doing, Tribe of Judah? The true, all I see is Sa. I'm not sure if it ran out on me or not, but thanks for being on with us, and thank y'all for the repost and everything. Hey, how you doing? You said go back to Africa? Which part of me? The Shwe part, the Ashanti part, the Cherokee part, the Irish part, the Israelite part, the Negro part, the Hebrew part? Which one you want to go back in the physical? Or the part that you just don't like because it dominates conversation and is so better at speaking than you. The only thing you have less is ad hominem, and to tell me to go back to somewhere. Meanwhile, you couldn't survive without my people if you wanted, right? But anyways, you said it's a great thing none of you are from Africa. Well, once again, if persons want to go ahead and make that argument, that's your argument. That's not necessarily mine, right? If you're doing the FBA thing and all that stuff, that's nothing more than helping to make sure that our diaspora remains split, which is why, we continue to be messed over anyway. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm not worried about that. And the nation that I'm worried about is Yahada Sha'al. Regardless of where you come from in the flesh, the goal is to make sure you go where heaven meets earth. That's my responsibility, is to lead us towards that, right? But in all these different things, once again, innocence. What was the innocence of man? The innocence of man and his innocence should have made sure that he was in the will of Yah and nothing else. What is the innocence of man? The innocence of man only had one language. That language was the language of all creation. What is the innocence of man? That innocence of man is for husband and wife to be one and to make sure that they are multiplied, replenished, subdued, right? And be fruitful. Excuse me, I missed that one. What is the innocence? See, what is we don't like innocent. We really don't care. Once again, if it's innocent, go back to those quarterbacks. Ben Roethlisberger, you got 2 championships and you got us to 3 Super Bowls. Hey, you can do all that stuff to your wife. Nobody cares. Oh, Drew Brees, you won a Super Bowl and you made everybody, joyful and spend a bunch of money so that New Orleans came together because of the New Orleans Saints. Nobody cares if you were out here saying bad things about black persons. $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, Brett Favre of NFL fame. Nobody cares that you're literally like taking money, robbing people of money. Like, in Mississippi, I believe it's the poorest state in the country. If it's not, it's pretty daggone close. And both of them are taking, money that's supposed to be going to families that are in need, right? Stuff that's supposed to be going to like programs for families that the government does, and they took that money and they put it into volleyball courts, allegedly. At this point, not even so allegedly, right? But I guess they're still on trial. I haven't even kept up with it in a long time myself. But nobody cares. Nobody cares that they're doing that. Because Brett Favre could throw a football. You said Mississippi and Puerto Rico, the most poverty-filled so-called states. Okay. Yeah, nobody cares. Nobody cares about them like that. Nobody's helping them out. Yeah, they speak in ignorance. Nobody worried about that. Nobody saying. And if somebody counts it out, once again, we got to protect ignorance. So how do we protect ignorance? Oh, see, you just don't want to work for anything. You're just a loudmouth. You're just one of those so-called black folk who are out here who are DEI. And if you didn't do, okay, I'm not DEI. I'm not even attached to your system. Now what? Well, see, that's why you need to get a job. Well, which one is it? Do I need to be dependent on you? Well, you need to get a job and work like us and blah. Why not? Or why do I need that? Why can't I just make sure my family is taken care of? Why can't I make sure that my people have their own language? Why can't I make sure that people, and when I say my people, I mean my nation, that we come together, right? When if you're here or when you see some of the stuff on Zoom, there's this ain't for black, so-called black persons only. Right? This ain't for so-called Africans only or FBA only. And the problem is that instead of keeping things innocent, instead of keeping it original, instead of keeping it pure, right? What persons have missed, instead of keeping it ignorant, instead of keeping it pure, is that if you were to go back to the origin of this stuff, right? The origin is Israel, but that Israel also could be the standard and be the thing that everybody becomes grafted into, so that because Israel is supposed to, the reason why Israel is such a big deal is because it is the place where heaven meets earth, according to Genesis 28, and it also are the only people, the only nation ever to have been designed 100% fully under the laws of Yah. Doesn't mean that we've never made mistakes, but we're the only one, right? So this is why Israel is important. We have to get ourselves in order and in alignment so others can join, right? But that also means that you got to respect who we are in the culture. If not, then you don't need to go ahead and pretend to be part of it. Or if you are, just say, hey, I'm only using the bits and pieces. This is why some Christian churches I do actually have a lot of respect for, not only because some are trying to come into the knowledge of who the Most High is slowly but surely, but also some of them are just tell you outright, yeah, we don't really believe in this part of the Bible. I actually can respect that. I don't live it. I don't like it. I don't want it, or I don't desire it. I don't crave it, and I think you're messing yourself up, and some of you are doing so on purpose. But I respect the person that says, "Hey, I'm just being honest with you. Yeah, that part of the Bible don't resonate with me." Right? Like when Steve Harvey was going through his stuff, and everybody he was ended up on all your, the Christian shows and what is it, TBN and all that stuff like that, right? And he was making the point to say all the stuff and talk what he was talking. I respect it. I didn't like it, but I respect it when he said, that part of the Bible that be talking about the curses, I don't pay attention to the curses because they ain't got nothing to do with me, right? And in a sense, if you're going to be lawful, it wouldn't have anything to do with you. But what he was saying is, I'm not trying to worry about something that the Bible says. I'm not worried about holy days. I'm not worried about if I don't do a holy day here or there. I'm not worried about if I'm going to continue to do Christmas. I'm just going to get the stuff that I want. And then he said, I'll speak life with that. That's not exactly how it works, but I can respect it because then when you come around, I know what that is. I know what time you are. I know how to protect myself from you. I know how to be prayed up against it. I know how if my son or anybody or any other children running around me were to ask me about you, I would know already. Oh, okay, that's where he's coming from, right? Kendrick is on some stuff with some of the stuff he believes too. That being said, he has some great stuff to say. He has some negative stuff, but at least he's honest about it. He'll tell you where he stands on it, this, that, etc. The third, right? Thanks for being part of the community, Pop. I don't know if I can say the whole name, but Pop. Right? How you doing, Sister Etherin? Right? I got respect for that. If you don't like Yah, okay, just say you don't like him, or if you like pieces of him, right? Don't do this whole thing. That's why I like the other person who came on the other day. I'm not sure if you're on again today or not, but when we were talking and you were bringing up Christ consciousness, and I was making the point to say, hey, that's what that word this is what that saying means, and you were trying to say no, that's not what I mean exactly, but then you started saying stuff that goes along with that rhetoric. You don't know that there are persons who want you to believe that Christ is more a consciousness, whether he was real or not. And even if he was real, he doesn't necessarily want you to do what he did or to follow what he followed. He just wants you to be conscious and aware of being a better person. So that's a way of taking Christ and saying, I'm going to do whatever I want with what he says. I'd rather you just say that than try to give me some weird vague new ageism called Christ consciousness. Right? I'd rather you do that than give me some weird new age superstitious mumbo jumbo and call it Christ consciousness. Right? Hey Andrew, how you doing? When you have a promise like I do, you don't just cut something as beautiful and as marvelous and majestic as your hair. Also, too, I don't have to fit into whatever thing that it is. Unfortunately, you do, which is why you have to live the way that you live. It's hateful and spiteful and using that homonym. I hope that you get your life better and that you allow the Most High to help you with that, though, right? But I don't have to do that, right? But this is how you have to realize we don't really care about innocence. We don't care about righteousness. We don't care about are we doing it the correct way. We're not really worried about that. We want to call it whatever we want to call it, right? We want to call it whatever we want to call it. We want to do whatever we want to do. We want to live how we want to live. We want to work wherever we want to work. We want to take off whenever we want to take off. We want to operate how we want to operate. We want to give whenever we feel like giving. We want to give whatever we want to give rather than what we need to give. And yes, finances, money included. But look, some of you don't give what you need to give as far as your energy. Remember I was talking about earlier about the if you have 10,000 working hours, according to Malcolm Gladwell in his book, if you do anything for 10,000 hours in your life, once you hit 10,000, you're an expert of it. If you study the top person to do whatever, normally on average, they've been doing about 10,000 hours, right? So if you've been doing anything for 10,000 hours, remember I said when I was younger, that didn't even make sense. But if I don't even go back to when I was 6, because I've been preaching since I was 6, right? I've been teaching since I was about 4, even though technically I was walking around listening to others teach, but then learn how to do stuff too, right? I was I even when I became agnostic, I was able to still preach, teach, and do things from different points of views, be empathetic, etc. Right? I've been learning and growing and getting deeper in the richness of Yah's word more and more every single day, right? Nonstop. And I'm thankful to Yah for it, nonstop. I'm thankful that we've been able to get greater and bigger in this word. We've been getting bigger as SOC and stuff. But remember in the beginning, I told you that if I erase a whole bunch of stuff I've ever done, and I only start from when Elder Amma suggested that I get on YouTube, and I just start there in 2014, right? If I just start from there, and if I only say that I'm on 300 days a year, which is actually low, and if I only say that I do an average of 3 hours a day of those 300 days, which is actually low, believe it or not, both of those are low, right? So just to be safe, if I did that, 300 times 3, Holy Spirit showed that I would have 900 hours every year, which means that if I went from 2014 to 2024 last year, that's 9,000 hours, right? 9,000 hours that I have. So then, or I'm sorry, and then if you add, yeah, then you add one more year, That's going to make it 9,900, right? Or I'm sorry, excuse me. So that's 2025 is 9,900. That means next year, by using the same thing, right, on the low end. And I used to do way more than I do now. So we're still being on the low end. But that being said, on the low end, if I were to add just a third of next year, that's 10,000 hours. Just from 2014, just social media, 2014 to 2025. Start the beginning of next year, that's 10,000 hours just in that period of time. Not even 12 years, right? I've eclipsed 10,000 hours, right? Now, why am I saying that? What are we talking about today? We're talking about the loss of innocence. That means it also, in order for you to become pure or tinted or more innocent, that means that it's practice, right? It's taken me practice to get to a place where a lot of persons ask, man, how do you deal with somebody who comes on a live session? They just start saying this and saying that, and they say stuff to get you, wrangled up, and they saying racist stuff, and they saying stuff about your wife and your mom, and making assumptions and this and that, or even persons that say they believe what you believe, and they come at you because you're not wearing the fringes the way they wear the fringes, or you're not saying the name the way they say the name, or you're not speaking the same dialect that they speak, and all this stuff. How do you deal with this stuff? And first things first, practice. Even before you saw me on social media, I knew what it was. I knew what apologetics was. I've been trained in debate. I know that debate had rules. So when somebody was unruly, I knew that they're not worthy of debate. I've been practicing. I'm a practitioner of this. I'm faithful to this every day, grinding. Right? Not just grinding for the sake of grinding in the kingdom. There's a whole bunch of times that I've done stuff wrong in front of y'all and had to practice and make sure that I didn't do it again. How you doing, Harold? Thanks for being part of the community. And I think somebody else came on too. Please forgive me for missing it. Right? But that's, I've been practicing. I've become an expert because I put time in. So if I'm gonna try to strive for innocence, try to strive for greatness, try to strive for purity, being the pure, my best self, being filtered, unadulterated, strictly filtered by kingdom prism, to be who I'm supposed to be purely, then it takes time, it takes practice, it takes effort. I'm gonna just keep it a buck with you, especially in the social media world. It's a little different. Sometimes in social media, they still doing like they used to do y'all in Hollywood and stuff. Where they trying to get you to be in Hollywood, and they trying to get you on the casting couch and do all that foolishness. Some places they still trying to do you like that, right? Literally do you like that, unfortunately. How you doing, Way She Blossom? Right? Some places they still trying to get us on all that. That being said, right, we're in the age now to where, especially now, it's always really truly been like this, but especially now, man, put that work in. Put that work in. Persons don't believe me until they go back and they look at stuff. That's the reason we have 3 channels is because they canceled us 3 times. We have a 4th channel too, but the 4th channel, the 3rd one, they didn't keep canceled as long. That's why there's 3 channels on TikTok. Why do we have a 2nd channel on YouTube? Because they took our stuff down when we were telling you guys how to make sure you didn't have to tap the jab. When we started teaching about sovereignty. That's what and praise y'all, because it caused us to break from the system. They want us to get paid through social media. And we said no, we don't need it anymore. And it's great because now you can't have anybody come up and you can't take us down because of saying that such and such who promotes or puts commercials on, wants to take you down. Yeah, we're not making as much finance as we could, but we're free. We're private. Right? We're allowed on your platform because your platform is public. But we can be private on your public platform. Therefore, we're able to move different because we're in the system, we're in the platform, but we're not of it. Right? So, but we had to get to a place to where we worked at. We get to a place when a person say, man, you guys, and maybe I'll be able to, maybe I'll show you at the end where we normally do the shout out, because it's raining. I can't really do the shout out the way we normally do, but at least not today. But I'll show you as far as you want to see it. I'll show everybody. Like we're here, and we get, every time we come here, we have more and more space, and eventually we're gonna do this on our own spot too. But we got to develop it a little bit better, right? But as far as you can see, all this stuff or whatever, right? We're only using a couple spots because some of us got here a day early. But once we open up all this, as far as you can see one way and as far as you can see the other, it's something that is going to be filled with us, SOC, and filled with Yah, filled with tents, filled with the Feast of Tabernacles, filled with love, filled with honor, filled with respect, We're gonna have a huge place that we're gonna put up where we're gonna be able to do service and stuff, so that every day when everybody gets up and we do these live sessions together, every day everybody be able in the same place, no matter if it's raining, if it's too much sun, or whatever the case might be. Everybody be able to be in there. We'll be able to come together. We'll be able to go fishing together. We'll be able to do all. Somebody says, "Man, you guys are growing." Yeah, because we've been putting in work. Before you knew who I was, I knew what the edict was. Right? Before you knew who Elder Alma was, right? I knew what the edict was. Before Solomon existed, I already had a vision, right? And it's not even my vision. I'm enacting the vision that Yah has given me. And we're trying our best to do it to the character. We don't always hit the mark, but we do our best to hit to the character, right? Every day, constantly. And so we're growing into a place, and growing into a thought process, and growing into a situation to where, yeah, like we are much bigger than where we used to be. Right? Not because we're just bigger as far as numbers too, but we're much bigger as far as like what we can do, but we practice, we worked on it. So when we come here, even for Feast of Tabernacles, there's a lot of stuff that used to have to be said, everything, you better do this, blah, blah, this and that. But now persons are gonna come and they just gonna automatically know. Because a lot of persons are coming back to do it, for the second, third, fourth time with us. Some of y'all have done it before that too. But I'm just saying, right, virtually, some persons are already going to know what to do. When they come on and you see them virtually, or if we do something on Zoom and stuff, some of you going to see them with the tent set up, all that stuff, right? Some of you going to see, we automatically come into a position because we know what we do, because we practiced it. When we come together for Passover, we don't have to really add or take away too much or whatever, but we don't have to go through too much stuff for the persons that are coming, because a lot of you if you're coming for the first time, have been learning about it, doing it on your own. And if you're coming together with us, been with us for a few years, you're just doing what we do every year, right? Practice makes, as somebody said earlier, we might not always be perfect, right? Our goal is perfection, and guess what? We strive towards perfection, and here's another one. Practice makes perfect. If we practice this correctly, innocently, separate from the world, every single time, then we end up perfect, or more perfect, or closer to perfect, whichever one you want to hold on to, right? But you end up in perfection. If you follow Yah's word to the character, Yah is perfect. If he's perfect, his word is perfect. Therefore, if you do what he says, you do it perfectly. All right? Anyways, rain is picking up a little bit, and we still trying to set stuff up as much as we can and all this stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. You can hear everybody's kind of waking up and stuff, and I'm actually going to have to go down and get ready to check in a little bit too for the rest of the slot, so we can finally have everybody get into their areas. Praise Yah. So we're going to go ahead and get things moving. Thank you again, my Shabbat. Tadam, my Shabbat. Thank you, family. We appreciate you. Thank you for those who've been helping us and stuff too. I didn't get a chance to see all the stuff, but I saw some of the stuff already with persons, helping out and sending stuff to help out with Feast of Tabernacles. Also too, Barak, my Shabbat. Thank you, family. I saw some of you who have sent gifts, who have sent blessings, who have sent text messages, who probably put stuff on Facebook and stuff. I'm trying my best to catch as much stuff as possible, but it's, I'm working, so but I'm trying my best to get to it. But thank you for the Yam Yasala, for the born day. I heard, I made sure I listened in after we finished early Rise of Bible study session. So thank you all for saying happy born day as well. But yeah, we appreciate you. So we'll be putting out virtual stuff for the rest of the week. So you'll see on your Google Calendar invites, if we don't have your email or whatever, make sure we do have it, but we'll be using mostly your email to show you when we're doing something together virtually that's outside of our normal live sessions. So like tonight will be a special live session. It'll still be online, but we still want you to come on and be with us if you can. I think it'll be on YouTube, TikTok. We might try to get it on Zoom as well, just so that if persons are wearing their shirts, we can all be in our shirts together and be seen. And even if not, once you get it, or if you have it already, we're trying to wear our shirt on the first day, which is tonight, and then the last night, which is Monday night. And I'll have a message for both, even though a lot of you are going to be leaving here Monday in the Rising, but Monday night we'll be here together. But yeah, and wearing our shirts if you have them. So thank you all. I saw Minister Raj was already walking around in his, praise God. Some of you already showed, and Brother Jermaine showed me that many of you have already gotten them. So thank you for supporting him as well. Much love to you all. Hope that you guys enjoy your day. So yeah, so basically, as far just in case you don't see anything, I may or may not start our session because technically we're eating. I think we start eating at 6 p.m. New York time tonight, and then by 7 p.m. New York time we're gonna play a game called Blind Faith. That's where we were saying you might want the solo cups. So I'm not sure. We're gonna try and see if we can get that on Zoom. I'm gonna try. I can't promise, but I will do my best to try and make sure that that's on Zoom. And so if you'd like to participate, we might even have it on a live session as well, maybe on TikTok or something. So we'll try to show you what's going on with that. And you guys, if you like, you can, yeah. So if you guys would like, we'll have it set up where you can, what is it I'm trying to say? Yeah, we'll try to set it up where you can be on Zoom and the live session so that you can at least watch and see everybody, see how the game goes and stuff, and you'll get a lesson just watching the game. It's a very great game. We've been doing for years. We haven't done it actually in 4 years. We used to do it every year, and then also too, we'll have it on Zoom as well. If you do want to try to participate, I will try to teach it to you guys in a way where you can play with each other virtually while we're playing with each other physically. Um, it's but you need solo cups, like the blue solo cups, red solo cups. Y'all know what I'm talking. Well, I don't know. Some of y'all might not know this because once again, we want you to be innocent. But those of you who know what I'm talking about and you used to get your little drinky drinks from, right, or you get your stuff at the cookouts and all that, the red, the blue solo cups or whatever color solo cups you use. We're gonna try to have that together. Okay. But love y'all. Appreciate you. Hold on. Yeah.
What is that?
Oh, he'll be back. So yeah, but I'm gonna go ahead and take my leave for the day. I thank you all so much. I appreciate you. You got red ones? Okay, there you go. So so we gonna thank you, Auntie Man. Thank you to everybody today. We gonna go ahead. If you want to try and have that, especially if you have a family or there's a couple persons that'll be with you at least for the night. See if y'all can set it up. Make sure, depending on how many you have, I would say if you can have at least like maybe, this might sound like a lot, but maybe like 20, depending on depending on how much room you may have to do. You're gonna basically be walking around. I don't want to give the game away yet. So I would say have like 20 to 50 cups. You're gonna be making the obstacle course, and we're gonna show you what we're talking about. Okay? So you're gonna do it with us. So if you're gonna play with us, play the game with us tonight. I'll try to see if we can have everything set up for you guys at 7 p.m. New York time, and you can join in with us. And if you're joining on Zoom, right, either I can tell you what to do, or somebody in your group can tell you what to do, or somebody else on Zoom might be able to tell you what to do. Okay, but we'll figure that out tonight. All right. But if you like to, I don't want to give away how the game works. I think I've talked about it before, but I don't want to give away how the game works. But if you want to join us for it, it's a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it. And so just get some solo cups in your life. Get about 20 of them at least. But yeah, so we'll try to have that on at 7, and then the live session at 8 p.m. New York time will actually be like our official convocation launching for this week. So hopefully everybody can join. Hopefully everybody can attend. We appreciate you all. I will do my best. It is raining and stuff, but I'll do my best to try and see if I can show you guys a little, where we're gonna be. It's a lot more and it's a lot bigger than what it's a lot more and it's a lot bigger than what you see here, but at least you'll see, most of where we'll be staying. So it'll be nice for you to at least see that part. Okay. So just give me a second. No shout out for today. That the shout out will be the little tour you guys get. For all praises to the Most High. All praises to him for my wife, the Honorable Amma. Thank you, moderators, Minister Staff, SOC, Lottie Dai, everybody. If you agree with us, disagree with us. First time listening, one time of many. Yeah, just appreciative of you all. And it's 11:11. Thank you. So we're appreciative of you. We hope that all is well. Hey, well, at least you weren't racist with it. I guess black people can have white babies, right? If that's what you're trying to say. Somebody was saying that I'm Tarzan's father, I guess. All right, anyways. Much love to y'all. Appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to see if we can do a little walk around. It's raining, so I can't do too long a walk, but we'll see if we can do a little walk around if you guys want to. So on both channels, we'll do it on YouTube and TikTok. But as always, if you have to go, this is Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, early Shabbat Shalom if I don't catch you for the evening service, because this whole period of time, this whole Yom for us is Shabbat. Alrighty. For those that can stay on, real quick, we just take a quick, I'm gonna try my best not to show too many persons on here. But so if you're somebody who's watching and you're physically here, just know that I'm gonna walk around a little bit. So not trying to, I'll do my best to not show as many persons as possible. Alrighty. But so I'll wait till I get down to the edge so you guys can see. Well, actually, you know what? We'll start here. Hold on. You guys gotta hold on because I got two devices that I'm showing at the same time. So what I do for one, I have to do for the other. Right. So this is our setup over here from our personal setup. Right. We put up last night, and this is the basketball that I had underneath the tire of the RV, and accidentally thought thought that I had blown my tire out. It was underneath one of these tires back here, and accidentally rolled over it. Heard a shot and thought I had messed up. By the way, I'm walking around the campsite, so if I start going in and out on signal, there's not really too much I can do about it, but hopefully it'll last. So you guys see we've got all this area and everything all the way back through here, right? As far as you can see, we probably won't be doing too much back there because it's a hill. And if you keep going further down the way that we're going, you actually go down to where we're going to do the baptism, but we won't be able to do that today. But those of you who come out on Saturday in the afternoon, we'll be doing our baptism Saturday afternoon, so you can watch on Zoom if you like to. Right? You can see there's some tents and stuff, person set up. So I'm walking through spots that will actually all be filled with vehicles and filled with tents in a little bit. But remember, we don't really start technically until this evening, so we had a few families came in a day early and praise God because they're also helping to put stuff together. You see this street right here going back and forth, or this, well, yeah, basically a street going back and forth that goes all the way out to the front. On everything on this side, we were actually, my wife and I were actually over here last year, and so it was our family were in two spots that are over here, and then everybody else was actually over here. If you recall from last year, that's where we were. So this year, we've got everything on one side going as far back. But as you can see, and I'm gonna try to make sure I don't get any license plates. So, right, but so as you can see, we have, and hopefully y'all can still hear me. I know my finger is covering the speaker, but I can't do anything about it. But so we have SOC family back this way. Give me a second. I don't want to get any license plates in here. Oh, snap. They both got license plates right there. Okay. But anyways, I'm almost around it. Right. So we have, and if you remember, if you recall, last year there was a big old rock that I was on top of preaching a couple times. And that's, I think, back there. Behind them. Yeah, behind them. Right. And so you see some of our brethren back here. So we don't have this spot yet until people come Thursday through Sunday, but we'll have all the way down here, which basically means we pretty much have space all the way down to the end of that road. And then we'll have stuff going all the way up if we walk through. Once again, I'm gonna try my best to make sure I don't show anybody's license plates, rather. License plates. I can talk, right? So we got that. Everything on the left-hand side. It actually worked out really well because one of the numbers didn't pop up. And I was like, what? I was like, how did I not make sure that we purchased one of those numbers, right? Because we got basically all these numbers like 70, or really 69 all the way up through 87. But the one number we don't have is the one that's all the way on the other side. So we don't want that anyway. So it all worked out. But yeah, all that stuff I was showing you, this is all gonna be us. Back through here. The children were out running around looking at deer and stuff earlier already, right? We'll continue to go through back here. This is gonna be cleaned up a little bit more, but we'll have, but like I said, all these spots will be where cars will be parking and persons will be putting their tents right next to it. You can see we got electricity in the spots as well, and water in these spots as well. We're picking up some food now. We're gonna go simple tonight. I think they're just doing hot dogs and hamburgers easy. So as everybody's coming in and all the babies are running around, we can do easy stuff. We'll have a couple nights where we do some marshmallows and s'mores and stuff. That's where we just were doing the live session. Crazy, yeah. This is we got a bathroom and everything right next to us. Praise y'all. The only thing we don't have here in the area is the laundry area. We got to travel a little ways to do that. But outside of that, everything that we need from fishing to cooking to fire pits to all that stuff is right here. Praise y'all. We got all these slots over here, all these slots over here, and back further down there. We got axes, we got chainsaws for wood. We purchased wood. We got coals. We got like 8. I think we got actually, well, not including the ones that including the ones that others brought with them. Besides us, I think we got 12 fishing rods already and some others on their way. All right, so we have all these spots we filled with vehicles. Right, and this spot right here, so we even got this here, we even got basically handicap spot, because if you see, it's literally attached to the place. So those that need to be able to get over, they can literally just come right through the sidewalk. Praise God. So all these different things that are going on, we're thankful, we're grateful for every single thing. I was at first worried because I was thinking we were going to have some that were down the hill, but it worked out. So this is the end. So we basically got everything all the way up through here, all the way to where we just came from. So when you see us, for the most part, preaching, teaching, worship, games, everything will mostly be in this area. The fishing, baptizing, some of the trips we're going to take are going to be in other places. And of course, people have free time to do what they must. And obviously it's raining, so it looks a little different from when the sun is out too. But it's actually not cold, which is great, because last year, the first night, which is technically the night, even though we've been here since last night. But last year, the first night, those of y'all who were here, y'all remember, boy, it got to 30 what? I think it got to below freezing. I think it got to the 20s. But people say it was like 35. I think it got to the 20s last. I remember looking at my app and it's saying it was in the 20s, right? Some of y'all was in the house that we were in for those first 4 days, so you didn't feel it like but it was cold last year. But then it was interesting when we got over here, the water was warm. And the first year was warm outside while we were over here the whole time. But then when we got in the water was freezing. So we're praying that we're getting that balance here. But yeah, so it's a beautiful spot back here. It's amazing. And yeah, so we'll probably use the spot even I don't know, when we get our land, we'll probably start shifting more stuff over there, but we'll probably use the spot for a little while. This has been a very great spot for us, very great to us. A lot of stuff to forage and go through and stuff. Fiddlehead ferns, I see a little bit of that here and stuff like that. You got a lot of different herbs and different things as well, different things that are growing. A lot of older trees and stuff as well. It's beautiful. So yeah, so we praise Yah for what he's been able to help us with, and that we're gonna keep on going. So anyways, love y'all to life. You all take care. If you're coming in person, you're going to see a schedule presented to you guys, probably posted. It's already been completed, even though it's subject to change. We'll make sure that we give you a schedule to look at for later, so you'll know what's coming up for this evening, and we'll make sure that every day, at the end of each day, you'll have the schedule sent out, group text to each one of you, so you'll know what's coming up. Those of you who are going to be joining us virtually, just keep looking in your Google Calendar invite. You'll get a schedule, basically, what's going to be happening every day, and for you virtually. And that also means that you'll, when we get ready to start, you'll get something as usual 30 minutes prior, an email, and then you'll get an email right when we start. All right. Love y'all. Love y'all. Love y'all. Take care. Hopefully you enjoyed the little mini tour that we just went on. Thank you again for those that helped, and continue to pray. And those that can, once again, please feel free, if you feel led to give offering, donation, tithe, whatever the case might be, because we still are, it does take a lot, even, to do a lot of the stuff and to get a lot of things done. And even with food, we should be okay, as we said, but we're trying at this point, even if we are, to be as frugal as possible, responsible as possible, and keep building stuff up. So not only stuff like this can be possible, but the stuff we do to help behind the scenes, the things we're doing to make sure we have better signal, and even the things that we're doing to make sure that hopefully, like land project stuff gets back on track to where we're about a year behind a schedule because of what we were going through last year as a family. So just little things like that, it helps us to get where we are. So I want to thank you in advance, and even just watching this, viewing this, sharing this, hitting that subscribe if you do, know that that helps us a lot more than what you think as well, and helps us to bless persons. Don't forget to, last thing, I know this is like me going on a tangent now, please don't forget that we're trying to help, once we get back in, or once I get back, especially by November, whenever I come back, but especially by the beginning of November, we're going to make sure that we start doing things to raise finances for the families that we're helping, and especially the children we're helping in Africa. So, and I'm once again, I'm trying to say the wrong place. I'm trying to say Zimbabwe. That's not it. It's not Kenya. I apologize. Sister Angela told us last time, and here I am forgetting again. I don't know why I want to keep putting it somewhere else that it's not the Congo, not not Central Africa, but wherever it is. Um, but we're going to start raising up some money for them as well. So just if you can kind of keep that in the back of your mind, so that when we start coming back, we can come back and start hitting that hard, and start really trying to help them and bless them. And who knows, maybe even go see them, depending on how that works out. But love y'all. Thank you so much again. We honor you. Hopefully you're having a great day. All praises to the Most High, Yah. If I don't see you tonight, may your Feast of Tabernacles start off great, well, and protected on all sides. And we love you lots. And we shall see you hopefully this evening. All right. Shabbat Shalom, or early Shabbat Shalom to you. Peace.